more than a cog in a giant machine, just as if they had worked at one of our larger corporate competitors.
Den Blaker said that despite having only 10 employees and a single location, he's managed to implement a number of unique policies to significantly reduce employee morale, including forbidding sales clerks to sit down during lengthy shifts, reducing their number of days with paid time off, and insisting on humiliating pat-downs during lunch breaks to ensure they never felt like trusted or valued employees.
Other small businesses might have given me benefits or, let me take a day off. But everyone here at Gilman's does their best to treat you like you're a totally replaceable tool for generating profit.
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. Welcome to the show. Phones are open if you want to join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here in the studio with you tonight, we've got Ian.
And Jay Noon.
We got, of course, a lot to talk about with you, but you get to bring up whatever it is you want to discuss, should you wish to join us. Again, the number for you to do that is 603-283-6160. So, coming up, Jay, we're going to get into TikTok as a addictive drug, basically. We can talk about that. I think you had something to say, some study that's come out on that, so that'll be coming up. Also, the Wall Street Journal reporting on what they're calling a revolt brewing in the English heartlands over cash. Debbie Hicks yelled into a microphone in a town square on a recent Saturday, "Let's boycott the shops that won't take cash."
Cool.
Where are they? She says. A few in the 200-strong crowd murmured some names: a coffee shop, a bakery. She said, "Okay, we can do this. It's not too late." Some 200 years after textile workers smashed newfangled looms here during the first stirrings of the Industrial Revolution, other rebels are worried about a newer technology: tap-and-go bank cards and smartphone payment apps. Actual cash changes hands in only around 15% of transactions in the United Kingdom. And I find myself wondering, what is the percentage in the United States? And state by state, which states are the most, cash-oriented states and which aren't?
I went to Tractor Supply like a week ago to buy about $1,500 and $52 or something worth of farm supplies, fencing equipment, just a bunch of stuff I needed for, spring and getting things done. And I gave the girl the money. I counted it all out. Actually, my daughter paid her. Cypress, she was in the wagon, and I given Cypress the $100 bills, and she's handed it to the cashier, and the cashier she counts them all out, and she's got them all, and she's looked at it, and she has it all there, and she counts it again, and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm nervous. I've never saw this much money before, or I've never handled this much money before," is what she said. And she goes, "Sometimes people spend a lot of money, but it's always on a card." And and then when she typed it into the computer, she was probably, I don't know, in her early 20s. She typed in 1552 or whatever it was, point whatever. Oh, no, it was, I gave her $1,550, which is a couple dollars shy of that, the total bill. And she wanted to make sure that I could verify that she put the correct thing into it's not even a cash register anymore, but, it's a keyboard and a computer screen, right. And then it's a, cashier's drawer underneath. Mm-hmm. And, she had to call the manager. She told the manager she was scared to have so much money in her drawer. I was
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked. She had a bunch of piercings, and her hair was 2 different colors, and she had a bunch of tattoos too. But I mean, it's just a young I don't know, victim of public school or something. I'm not really sure, but she was had no confidence. She was clearly scared that I gave her so much money. Wow. And it kind of shocked me a little bit.
Probably thought you were a drug dealer or something like that.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
They say it's about 15% of transactions in the UK pushed out by the speed and convenience of using a card or phone. In parts of London, cash has become something akin to a prison currency, like ramen noodles or cigarettes, circulated among panhandlers or those on the margins of society. An unlikely coalition warns that by giving up cash, people could be losing more than they bargained for. Banknote printers have pooled resources to fund academic studies to demonstrate how cash is an important piece of infrastructure. Simon Ewell at Positive Money, a London non-profit focusing on financial inclusion, says cash is inherently democratic. By going card-only, bars and restaurants are trying to pull in what they see as the right kind of customer, usually younger and more affluent, he said. They're sending a signal about who's welcome and who's not.
I'd love to comment on that just a little bit.
Of course.
So we were out doing some court paperwork today and filed some stuff at the courthouse, had a babysitter, so my wife and I went on a date to the Red Arrow.
Oh, I love
Concord.
that Red Arrow. Once upon a time, 24-hour diner. It is no longer since COVID.
Oh, okay.
Sadly.
Well, I like that place because you can get, the curd cheese in your omelet there because they serve poutine, which is,
okay.
the Quebec, French fries, gravy, and cheese. I don't get that. But anyways, so one thing I think that's really rude to do to waitresses is people will pay for their meal on a card and then they take the card and they add the waitress I see some people just do the 7% with a calculator, put it right to the penny.
7%?
Whatever it is.
That's cheap.
Right. Or some people
15 is kind of the standard, but 20 is what people who know the business typically give.
Right. And then some people, give a more generous, $10, $15 or $20 tip, on their card.
Yeah, that hurts them.
And I kind of think that's like a hate crime against waitresses.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
I have cash in my wallet specifically to leave as a tip.
So, and even small businesses, I almost think it's rude to swipe a card for small businesses because the little hardware store down the road, they got guys trying to buy a thing for $3 and they're like, you have to spend at least $5. And the guy's like, I'm not sure I got $5 on this card. I'm like, really? I'm thinking to myself. So anyways, the cashier just lets them do it. But because basically they lost money. They didn't even make a profit because of the finance charge on a card. But so what I tell the waitresses, I used to carry a little business card. I might have actually got the business cards from someone here.
Gift cards, right?
Well, so yes, I did that. The gift cards with Bitcoin Cash, and then I would give them a cash tip and a Bitcoin Cash tip card. But one of the things that I used to have a business card. It would basically say that I would tell the waitresses I don't tip. I leave a gift.
Right.
This is a gift for you. It's not taxable because,
the
whatever.
Libertarians used to have that.
Yeah. So I used to pass out those cards all the time. But so I said that to the girl today. I said, hey, by the way, I just want to let you know I didn't leave you a tip. I left you a gift. And as soon as you say, I didn't leave you a tip, you could just sort of see the expression washes off their face. But I said, I left you a gift.
Yeah.
And her face is brightened up. and she goes, I'm not going to feed the parasite. Taxation is theft. And
she said that?
She said, but I say this to almost every waitress I ever come in contact with. And I go, and I hadn't been there in a while.
But had you had her before?
No. She said she didn't know who I was, but she said she goes, oh no, there's an older fella. He comes in here and he tells me the same thing. And so I thought that was pretty cool.
You got to love New Hampshire.
Yeah. And she, she's like, and he's so sweet and always leaves a good gift. And so, yeah, I thought that was cool. And, but the thing is, too, is so these bars where it's cash only. I mean, if I was a waitress, I wouldn't want to work at that place. I mean, not cash only.
Cash
I'm
only?
sorry, card only.
Do those exist in New Hampshire?
Well, not New Hampshire, but isn't that what they were just talking about in the article? That these
This is the UK.
Right, but I'm just saying, anywhere in the world, I would imagine, if it's an establishment that's not going to take cash, and as a server in that establishment, I would think I would rather work in an establishment.
You're at a disadvantage.
Right, I would rather work in an establishment where their people are paying cash because then I can receive that gift incentive essentially, and just. Because you can just put the cash in your pocket.
Paying cash, they're more likely to tip in cash.
Right.
I have done paid a bill with a card, but then tipped in cash because I always tip in cash. I don't want to, like you're saying, it's a hate crime to the person to not give them cash. You reminded me of another story, another New Hampshire story. Bonnie and I were out at we were in Manchester. It was during the Liberty Forum this year, and I had permission to be out from my probation to go to Manchester to do that.
That was nice.
That event. And we went to a Thai restaurant on the recommendation of actually my probation officer, and it turned out to be pretty good. And we're there, and I do what I normally do, which is I like to ask the waiter. It puts cash down for the tip on the table, and I get the gold back out, and I always ask the person before I give a gold back away, which for listeners that don't know, it's an actual piece of gold. It's 1/1000th of an ounce of gold. Very, very beautiful. You should look it up if you're not familiar with it. But I always like to ask first, because I don't want to just give somebody something if they don't value it. So I say, hey, do you like gold? So they go, oh, gold back. So he knew what it was that I was going to give him. I said, oh, you've seen this before. He says, oh, yeah, one of our other customers came in and gave me one last week or whatever it was. So it's like somebody had already beaten me to it, which is just a nice like New Hampshire story, because there's enough Free Staters and Liberty people out there going to businesses doing the same thing that you're doing, right? Like getting the word out about these independent currencies to people. So I didn't even have to pave the way. Somebody had already been there. They'd already done it for me. And so, yeah, he was already into it. So I left him the gold back, and he was really happy about it.
So interesting thing. 2 days ago, I get a phone call from a farmer up here in New Hampshire, and I've been dealing with him for like the past 3 years. I've bought hay off him. I've bought some cows off him and some equipment. And he's like, hey, I'm going to make hay next week. And he goes, you're the first guy I'm calling. He goes, would you trade me? Or he goes, you want to pay me in those gold things that you showed me? And I go, you mean the gold back? He goes, yeah. He goes, I got one here in my wallet. He goes, the first day I met you, he goes, you just gave it to me. You go, here, check this out. He goes, I found it the other day, and I had to explain to my grandson what it was. He says, and he goes, I'm going to bale some hay next week. And he goes, would you give me one gold back per bale of hay? Said, absolutely. Okay. And he wants me to pay him all in gold backs for like a couple hundred bales of hay. I'm going to get a trailer load of hay from him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And he brought it up.
Yeah, he totally. Well, he said basically he says usually the first phone call, whoever he calls just buys all of his hay that he makes. He only makes a couple. He does like a 8-acre field or a 12-acre field, not big. And so, anyways, and it's far away from his farm, so he doesn't want to haul it all back home. And if we just pick it up the field, it works out well for him. And he just really liked the gold, and he's just like
been thinking about it.
And he's like 72 years old. He's got like 14 grandkids, and well, he's also the same guy I've been telling him to tell his. I told him to tell his kids that he's cutting them all out of the will and giving the whole farm and everything to the church unless his kids get the grandkids off the internet devices, because the internet devices are destroying the kids. And he's like, you're right. All the kids are doing is, he goes, they're getting their thumbs fat. He's like, he goes, they're like little crackheads having withdrawals when their mothers dump them off here to go stack hay because I won't allow the phones on my farm. Oh yeah,
can't stack hay if you're on your phone.
So, but he's like, and I've been talking. He don't want to hear anything about Bitcoin because it requires a phone. This guy hates the internet so much because he just sees what it's doing to his to his DNA.
Wow, it's a good story.
Yeah.
So we'll get into the TikTok and the internet thing here in a little bit, but talking about cash, apparently there's a group of people out there that are, they're trying to gather some economic weight together and let these businesses know, hey, you're missing out on our business. We're not going to bring you business. We're not coming to your place if you don't take cash. And they point out here that the card-only bars and restaurants are trying to pull in a certain type of customer, people that are more affluent. And, if that's what they want to do, obviously it's their business. They can run it however they want. I get that. You don't want the riffraff coming into your fancy bar. And if the riffraff can't pay in their fancy card, then they're not welcome. So, I understand that's what they want to do.
Those aren't the kind of people I want to hang out with, so I wouldn't go to that place.
But it's weird when you see it done on like a corporate level, then it starts to seem like more like, okay, this is a plan. This is part of some sort of overarching big corporate plot to get rid of cash. Like Chipotle, I believe, has done this now. I don't know if it's still true, but I know that during the quote-unquote pandemic, they went no inside dining and card only. You could pay online, and that was it. You could not order there. You had to order online and then just come and pick it up. And I don't know if they've switched back to accepting cash. I've heard that they don't. And so, like, there, it's like, oh, come on, Chipotle? That's not like fancy dining. It's not like there's an exclusive clientele. Used to be if you could just walk off the street, get yourself a burrito. And I'm not a huge fan of them or anything like that, but that was what came to mind. That's the one that's the one around here.
I had an experience with them a couple years ago in Manchester, and what ended up happening is I go order these two. They basically come out to like $24, and they're like, the guy's like, dude, I can't take cash. I'll literally get fired.
Is this pre-COVID?
No, this was during COVID. Okay. This was during a thing. And he's like, didn't you see the sign? I'm like, no. I told him I was looking at my phone when I walked in, and so I did see the sign, but whatever. So they had a tip jar that was like over off to the side. So he's like,
that's interesting.
I'm just gonna have to throw these out, and he goes, have a good day, and he just gives them to me.
Whoa!
So I go over to the tip jar and I drop $25 in it, and he's like, thanks, bro, and I just
left. That's an awesome story. So they say here people around the world have been embarrassed at times when hair salons, pubs, or salad chains asked for plastic and they had only paper. Some are standing up for paper money and have no plans to fold. In the U.S., Stephen Ferry carries his wallet in addition to cash, a supply of small cards created by one of a growing number of pro-cash groups that tout the benefits of physical money. He hands them to cashiers and leaves them on checks at restaurants. So he's got a little card too. He says in the card in part reads, quote, I paid cash today for a reason, and then a little smiley face. Using cash can be inconvenient, but what if it's worth it? Ferry, who lives in eastern Tennessee and is semi-retired, isn't opposed to credit cards, but makes a point of paying with cash as often as he can. He and his wife bring hundreds of dollars on twice monthly errand runs into town. They said they had a couple of G's on them when they recently bought an iPad and a new phone. He said he's never been particularly worried someone would try to steal the cash he carries, though he does keep pepper spray on his keychain. For him and some others, this isn't just an attachment to the old ways. In the UK, the lady who they spoke with earlier, Hicks, who cuts a glamorous figure in her black leather jacket, is among those who go further. She and her supporters say groups such as the World Economic Forum used the COVID pandemic to discourage people from using physical money, and they absolutely did. That was a huge rollout opportunity to try to shift businesses over to all quote-unquote touchless or card-based payments.
I'm sure there's incentives for these businesses. I'm sure that banks are incentivized by so somehow government or the World Economic Forum or Bill Gates or some foundation, they incentivize all kinds of activity, whether it's vaccines, whether it's using this kind of money, whether it's partial zero emission car is such garbage. For example, just to digress a little bit, if you live here and you're sitting out in your porch, how many cars stop at this stop sign, the engine shuts off, and then right as they pull away, the engine starts up. That's what makes it partial zero emission, from what I understand. I actually could be wrong about that, but this is what a mechanic told me. And so he was saying something about a lot of these cars that do this, that people drive in a city, they're Uber running them, the engines are they're not even getting 70, 80,000 miles out of the engines because they're constantly starting up and shutting off, starting up and shutting off, which is like a bad thing to do. But back to these, so for example, these restaurants are going to go cashless. I'm sure there's some kind of percentage of your ESG score might go up with on the financial side, because they want everybody to have a
what's
social,
the ESG stand for? I see it all over and I never
environmental
remember.
Social governance score.
So that probably is something newer. I know years ago we reported on Visa was incentivizing businesses. They were saying, hey, if you go all cashless, we'll give you $10,000 or whatever. But it wasn't every business. It was you'd be entered into a contest, and then a few businesses would get $10,000 or something like that. A few of them,
okay, yeah.
So yeah, they weren't doing a big giveaway. It was just, but that was one way they were trying to incentivize.
But so these banks from on up are incentivizing. So the banks incentivizing, the chain of how valuable is it if you have a chain of say Chipotle's? I don't know, was there a few thousand of those?
That's got to be, yeah.
I don't know.
It's a huge chain.
So if whoever you're doing your banking with is going to be like, hey, if you agree to only go cash, and so the bank probably thinks of it.
They could lower the rates. They could say, hey, we're charging you 2.9% every transaction, but if you go only cash, we'll drop it to 2.8% or 2.7 or
they could go zero
that.
because what's worth all the money. They could even give them a kickback. We're going to give you 0.5% back. We're going to give you 0.1% back, because what's worth all the money is all of the data that is basically that is available for harvest by that financial transaction. So now you want to You really want to get, can you imagine if Adolf Hitler had this technology and it was illegal to hide Jews, and all the algorithm would have to do is say, hey, there's our census report says that there's a family of 6 that lives in that house. But that family of 6 is consuming more like a family of 9 of food. So we need to go look there. And, these people bought the ingredients to, make a bread that, is whatever that bread is that when people celebrate certain Jewish holidays, for example. Or they bought, this kind of stuff, and they're going to make some kind of religious related, just plug in religion that's illegal, kind of thing. So the metadata is far more valuable probably than the actual financial transaction.
Banks, that's how they make their money, right?
Sure,
like they're not going to just give you fees.
Now they have data to sell. I mean, that's how Google makes its money, right? Getting data.
I guess. Yeah, but you're giving banks too much credit. I mean, banks aren't like the most with it companies. They're old, right? They're slow. They're kind of stupid.
Well, the problem is the banks are all going to be gobbled up probably by big tech one way or another. And
you think so?
Yeah, I just think so. Or vice versa. The banks are going to gobble up big tech, but they're basically going to be all in bed together as this technology grows because. So now big tech knows that the bank, knows that they can probably get this data. I believe the data is really valuable, and also it's a huge incentive if you could give an incentive of 0.5% back to the to the vendor to go cashless, for example. So that would be a huge incentive, and they just want to track, trace, and database everybody's really the bottom line.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, I think they can accomplish those things by giving them a discount. Getting them on board, and then they get the money and they get the data. They would get both in that case. So they're talking about the World Economic Forum as their motivation. These are the people that are advocating for cash, to people continue using cash. They said that during the pandemic, World Economic Forum discouraged people from using physical money, and they called lockdowns a dummy run for establishing world government. And I think they're probably right about that. We talked about that here on Free Talk Live during that time. Hicks was fined for a public order offense last year after filming in a hospital to prove that the pandemic, she said, was faked. She denied the charge, saying she was exercising her right to freedom of expression. Others agreed with her mission. Piers Corbyn, one of the leaders in the group, said the whole digital system can't work if we still use cash. And that much is true unless they decide to take the cash away. I mean, that is ultimately if there is a plan to decashify society, and I think there probably is, it's just been a very slow-moving plan, you will likely see them at some point start putting more restrictions on cash. Now, it's not something they're going to be able to do overnight, but if you look at other places like in Nigeria, for instance, we reported late last year, I think it was, that there were major protests going on. It might have been earlier this year. Anyway, not long ago, there were actual thousands of people in the streets in cities in Nigeria smashing bank buildings to bits.
Right.
Destroying ATM machines, destroying bank frontages, signage, things like that. And they were mad because the Nigerian government was demanding that everybody turn in their old Nigerian naira, which is the government currency there. And they weren't going to get rid of the naira, supposedly. They were going to exchange them for newer designs of the naira. So,
I'm glad the people didn't just take it.
Oh, no, they were pissed.
Yeah, that's great.
About that. The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. But the problem was the banks weren't given enough naira to make the exchanges, so there wasn't enough of the new currency to replace the old currency, and people were literally, they couldn't use their old currency anymore past a certain date. It was a mess. More coming up.
Excuse me, is this where I get a license to start a new business?
I wouldn't be hasty. You have to get a license to go out of business, too, you know.
Oh, well, look, I've invented this little anti-gravity machine, see?
Oh, is that why you're walking 2 inches above the floor?
Oh, yes, it's very comfortable. It saves on shoe leather.
Yeah, well, you have to fill out these forms and report to the Human Services Department of Manpower Orientation and register with the Fair Employment Practice Commission, the Wage and Hour Division of the Employment Standards Administration, the State Sales and Income Tax Division, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and, of course, OSHA.
OSHA? I thought that was a little town in Wisconsin.
You'll find out. Say, floating around like that could be dangerous. Have you checked with the Consumer Product Safety Commission?
Well, not yet.
Come to think of it, you actually are flying, aren't you? Look, you need to go over to the Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation...
It's very hard to get anything done these days if you're in business, but free enterprise built this country. Think what could happen if we don't keep it free. A public service of this station and the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise, Bellevue, Washington.
We just can't have people floating about unregulated, you know.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The leader of the far-right Oath Keepers militia group has been sentenced to 18 years in prison over his role in the January the 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. It's the most severe punishment so far of over 1,000 cases stemming from the attack. U.S. correspondent Ira Spitzer has more.
A federal judge sentenced Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes to 18 years on seditious conspiracy and other charges. In handing down the sentence, the judge called Rhodes an ongoing threat to what he called the very fabric of our democracy. The Yale Law School graduate and former Army paratrooper founded the far-right militia group in 2009. During the trial last year, prosecutors described how the 58-year-old had mobilized his followers to storm the Capitol in a violent effort to overturn the results of the 2020 election and keep Donald Trump in power. Speaking in court before the sentencing, Rhodes called himself a political prisoner and reiterated his support for Trump. Ira Spitzer, San Francisco.
US President Joe Biden says he believes a deal will be reached to raise the country's debt ceiling, saying the two sides had made progress but that negotiations continue. Republicans want to roll back government spending, but President Biden and Democrats do not. The credit rating agency Fitch has put the US on Rating Watch Negative, reflecting the uncertainty around the possibility of a first-ever default. President Biden reiterated that the only way to move forward is to find a bipartisan agreement.
Speaker McCarthy and I have had several productive conversations, and our staffs continue to meet as we speak, as a matter of fact, and they're making progress. I've made it clear time and again defaulting on our national debt is not an option. The American people deserve to know that the Social Security payments will be there.
Some parents in Texas are finding a new book in their children's backpacks this week. Winnie the Pooh's Stay Safe. It's a new book about what to do in an active shooting, teaching kids to run, hide and fight. Tony Waterman has more from Texas.
The book was sent home with children as young as 4 in the Dallas area, parents say, with no warning or follow-up discussion. The illustrated book features Winnie the Pooh and some of his friends telling kids what to do during an active shooter situation. Things like, if danger is near, do not fear. Hide like Pooh does until the police appear. Pooh, in this scene, is seen burying his head in a pot of honey. Some parents and teachers say they find the book disturbing, especially since it was sent home the same week as the 1-year anniversary of the Uvalde school shooting, where 21 people were killed.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. You can bring up anything you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian and Jay in the studio. We're talking about mainstream media covering the, what do we want to call these people? Cashists?
Cashists, the anti-cash people?
They're pro-cash. Well, I'm talking about the people that are pro-cash.
Yeah.
That's what they're writing the story about, is people who are getting out there encouraging others to continue using cash when the corporate world, the World Economic Forum, the government types, the bankers of the world want everybody to be tracked. We know they're pushing the idea of the central bank digital currency, a.k.a. the CBDC. That's something that some places are already seeing coming out. And the United States hasn't approved it yet, but they are in the experimentation phase with the idea of the CBDC, which of course would give the government total control over everybody's money, or the government currency.
I heard a nice theory on this thing possibly collapsing. Yeah, it was actually the guy to give credit to was Howard Carr. I was listening to him on a drive over, and he's all right. And so
he's just a Republican.
Sure, he is, but he's very much against this, CBDC thing.
Yeah, until the Republicans are the ones who implement it, then he'll be fine with it.
And but but actually, now that I'm talking about it, I believe it was a commercial for like investing in like a gold something. But anyways, they were talking about he was reading some report how some like, you know, internet security blockchain expert was saying how the Fed coin, the blockchain technology is so weak because because it's centralized, and they would only have to compromise a couple of these few centralized servers that would like run this platform. And he was basically saying how it would be like a very easy for like the computers to like hijack it and steal everybody's money and like get in there and do that. I just thought,
like, what are you talking about, hackers or something?
Hackers going in and stealing because they would be able to, because once the whole system.
You're talking about on a CBDC?
Yes, FedCoin. He was talking about CBDC.
No, it would be just centrally controlled. So I mean, even if the hackers could get in there and move money from one account to another, then the central manager could just come in and undo it.
And, well, basically what he was saying is that it would be, what this report was saying is it would be very easy to hack. Now you're saying
it probably would be because it's a government system, so it'll probably be easy to hack.
And I just think it would be hilarious if like all the people who like, you know, I just aren't learning how to like, you know, trade outside the system, that don't care, that just go and do their slave jobs and they just pay their taxes and, you know, just sit home and watch TV and, you know, not really pay attention to what's going on. You know, it's mostly like the parasite class people. So basically all these people who essentially, you know, work in government and like probably couldn't get a job anywhere else unless government existed. If everybody,
Joe Biden.
Yeah, pretty much like everybody that works in
Ron
government,
DeSantis.
Maybe except for like the guys who like pave the road and plow, you know, because I still want the roads plowed.
Me too.
In the wintertime. And if the government can't pay them, well, I'm gonna go offer them
somebody
something.
will.
And
they're going to get paid.
I'm sure me and all my neighbors would love to give them, you know, 1% of our annual property tax bill that we used to pay to, you know, to make, and these guys would be getting paid better. But when it all, you know, if it all collapsed because it was a centrally controlled financial system, and I could see that CBDC, since there is absolutely unlimited, you know, amount of money could be pumped into it, from what I understand. They could just keep on just generating this stuff.
Well, they can do that today. That doesn't change anything.
But I think it could hyperinflate. But if it just got to the point to where it was just like got hacked and destroyed, and everybody and all the like these people, you know, all the government people basically were very reliable on this system, and a lot of people don't work in government. I think
the corporations are going to be on board.
I think like a massive collapse like that, which is just going to do society so good, because bad times make for strong men. And I can tell you right now, there's less strong men than there's ever been.
No doubt. I think you're right that since it will be a centrally controlled government system, it will be subject to hacking.
Very vulnerable, from what I understand.
There's no doubt about that. I don't think that it will be, the
disruptive?
end of the world. It'll be disruptive as hell, but it won't be the end of that system. They won't be able to, like, if you think you're going to hack the central bank digital currency system and get something out of it besides destroying it, I think you're wrong about that. Because if all your goal is to take money out of the central bank's account and put it into your own account,
this kind of sound like what they were talking
about. They're going to undo that,
right.
and like as soon as they detect that something's gone wrong, they're just going to hit the undo button, and then hit the reset button, go back to yesterday or whatever. That's no problem. It's just a central database. But if their goal is to actually take down the central bank digital currency, then they could do that, and it may be out for a day, it could be a week, could be a month. Who knows? Who knows what kind of damage could be done to that? And then the question becomes, what do the people do if they've gotten rid of cash at that point? Because that's the long-term plan, is introduce the central bank digital currency, get people incentivized to use it. You don't want to use the stick if you can use the carrot, right? So the government's certainly fine with using the stick, but they know that it's better if they can get people to agree to use the central bank digital currency. So they're going to do giveaways, right? They're going to have welfare payments are going to be on the CBDC, right? Tax returns, refunds or whatever. Those are going to be on CBDC.
Universal basic income.
When and if that comes out, that'll be a CBDC thing. And so the more people that can get hooked on the system, they'll get the corporations to accept it. So you can go and you can spend it at Walmart or whatever. Yeah. And then for most people, most of the time, they'll be getting their direct deposits to the CBDC,
sounds wonderful,
et cetera, et cetera. And so at some point, they'll try to pull away the cash.
Right.
And if the cash is gone and then somebody hacks the CBDC after that, what does that look like?
So as a producer of food, meat, vegetables, as someone who has a lot of essentially I have skills I can get paid very well for. Heavy equipment repair, all the work I'm able to do. I look at this as I'm not accepting CBDCs. Well, first off, I probably couldn't because I'm not going to go through.
You need
all
a social security number. You'll
Probably.
have to be a man of the system.
And I have no interest in any of that stuff. I've never had a bank account, nor do I even want one.
Right.
And but the thing is,
this is worse than a bank account.
Right.
This is even more evil.
Well, what this is going to do is it's going to really drive the black market, especially here in New Hampshire, because it already thrives. Essentially, just there's like I could, and probably the one thing that would be hard to do is like maybe pay some utilities, but the utilities are going to find a way to get paid because there's a whole bunch of people that are going to, I believe, that aren't going to want to pay them. But even if I go do some work for some guys and I'll be like, hey, pay my electric bill, and they're like, yeah, no problem, because I do that all the time anyways, because I am. I'm valuable, and people, get things done, and I'll do work, and they'll pay me however I want. I don't want a check. You can't pay me with your, Venmo or PayPal or any of that stuff. And the one thing I've noticed, so if you're in America and you're like looking to make like cash transactions in like the secondhand market, like through like Facebook Marketplace or like Craigslist, I really like Craigslist a lot better. Because when we try buying stuff that we see like farm equipment or like livestock we want to buy on Marketplace, well, actually, Marketplace really can't sell livestock on it, but they still do. Just change, work around the algorithm.
Okay.
But almost all those guys want you to pay them through some kind of app or digital thing. I've noticed on Marketplace.
That's no good.
Facebook Marketplace, very few people are interested in cash.
Strange.
And in fact, my wife really likes buying stuff on there for like used baby clothes and stuff, and like stuff for the kids.
Yeah.
And like the bunch of people like aren't interested in taking cash on when you just go meet them locally, they're around town or whatever. But on Craigslist, everybody's like, oh yeah, you got to pay me cash. And one thing I've been noticed about the Craigslist farmers, I'm just doing farm stuff, is like that guy I was telling you about last time who just like hates the internet, they're not into any of that stuff. They're using flip phones, a lot of these farmers and stuff. But
right.
like, just
these are older guys though.
Most of them are, but even the younger kids that are farming, they're like, they might have they got a smartphone, but they're like, oh yeah, man, I want you to pay me cash, and
as long as that stays alive, then they can't get rid of cash, right? As long as there's enough people who refuse to go along with the CBDC, then they can't just cut off cash entirely. It wouldn't be a good look for them to do that. It didn't look good in Nigeria, and they had people literally rioting in the streets and destroying bank buildings when they weren't even trying to get rid of the cash. They just screwed it up. Whether they did it on purpose or not is another question, but they didn't have enough cash to dole out to people. So if there's enough people, and they're saying in this story from the Wall Street Journal, 15%. Now, this is in the UK. I would need to look up some numbers for the United States. But they're saying 15% of people are still paying with cash, which means, the vast majority of people are using debit cards, credit cards, or some sort of app like an Apple Pay or a Google Pay. And 15% is probably still enough to keep it around. I don't know at what point they'll be able to justify pulling cash away, but ultimately this is a generational plan, right? Like that's why they're not going to do this all at once. They want to roll out the CBDC, and they want those old farmers you're talking about to die off. The people who are old enough to, remember earning cash when they were a kid and paying for things with cash. And it was actually Benjamin, who's one of the guys with Goldback. He gave a really great speech at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, I think last year, which I watched on video later, where he explained what part of the problem is. And I think it was a really well put explanation, and that is that a lot of young people today, they grew up with no cash.
Right.
Okay, so they grew up on devices, as you were talking about.
It's the imprinting.
And they're used to...
making transactions on Fortnite. That's what they're used to.
That too, but also just using a card, right? So when they go to a grocery store, they go to any shop, they're paying on the card. They're not used to actually seeing something leave. They don't have, when you pay with a card, you don't have that experience. I mean, at some level that dollars or whatever numbers are leaving a bank account or leaving, whatever ethereal account that you have, but it's not the same thing as actually having to take something from your wallet, hand it over to another person and receive goods back in exchange for it. It just seems more magical or whatever when you do it with the card. So it's almost like these people are kind of being put under a spell. He didn't use that terminology, but that's essentially what's going on, right? They're so used to just tap and pay. It's got there. You get all this stuff. You just tap, and then boom, there it is. They're not exchanging. You don't have that feeling of an actual exchange going on, and that they've never had that. In fact, there's an interesting video. There's a series of them. You know, I'm sure you've seen these videos where they go around. They ask Gen Z young people, like, you know, what's the capital of the United States or whatever. And they can't answer the question.
Right.
They can't answer just like the most basic questions. Sometimes they'll ask
sad,
questions.
those videos.
Yeah, they really are. And sometimes they'll ask questions like, how many dimes are there in a dollar? And they don't know. They don't know what a nickel is. They don't know what a dime is. They think it's, a bag of weed or something like that, right? I mean, they have no idea. Now, I'm sure there's still some young people that understand this, but the question is, how many of them are like the kids that you see in these videos where they cannot tell you how many quarters are in a dollar?
Oh, a lot of them. And so, where most kids, like my generation, kind of like learned about dollars and cents and money is, it was like I don't remember how, but I do remember being in first grade, being 6 years old, and I do remember paying cash for my lunch in school.
Okay.
I remember that. And all through high school, so in first grade it was under $1, and in high school it was like $3,
okay,
for lunch. And I thought $3 was ridiculous when it went to $3, but that's because I didn't, my mom or my dad bought the food, not me. I didn't know what food was worth.
Yeah.
But actually it's just dirt cheap. Anyways, it was dirt cheap back then. But I was talking to someone about 4 or 5 years ago, and about their kids or something in school, and she's like, "Oh darn." She got a text message. She goes, I got to re-up my kids'
lunch account,
food account. So the kids basically got a school ID card.
Yeah.
And, it's on a lanyard, and it's around his neck or whatever, or in his backpack. And if he doesn't have that, he don't get lunch.
They were doing fingerprints at one point, Jay, in some school districts.
So basically when you take, I believe it. When you, okay.
They did that.
You're not going to lose your fingerprint, right?
Right. So they were doing training kids for biometric ID. I mean, this was back probably in the early aughts, late 90s or something like that. I remember when I was in high school, it was a code. Yep. You'd give a code number to authorize payment from whatever that system was.
Yeah, I don't remember that. But and also, so like my daughter, like I sold someone some meat a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, collect the money, Cypress, count it, and and she went through it, and we gave the girl her change. And every time I'm somewhere, I let her pay or That's whatever good. Because I want her to understand this. And she does understand the difference between dimes and quarters and nickels. I don't think she would tell you there's 20 nickels in a dollar, but she knows there's 4 quarters in a dollar.
That probably puts her ahead of a lot of 20-year-olds.
Right, and she's 3. But I don't use any cards. I don't. And the thing is whatever example you set. But so it sounds like and then another thing too, I've seen with kids. I've seen this with when I was out in Colorado. All these guys I worked with, all their kids had their own debit card. Now, when I was a little kid, I can remember, I don't know, I'm going to go off with my buddies. We're going to go bike riding. I'm like 8 or 9 years old. Hey, my dad's like, you got $20 on you? Make sure you got $20 here. Put it in your sock. Right. Yeah, whatever. Make sure you got a quarter so you can call me or a couple of dimes. And
good luck finding a payphone these days.
Right. And my dad would be like, you go with your 3 buddies, like, these guys got any money? Anybody got any money? Where are you going? And you just make sure we had enough money, we could eat some food or something.
Sure.
And today they're giving the kids a card.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I mean,
yeah, that's a fact.
It's conditioning.
Yeah. So we're talking about this Wall Street Journal story here about the cash advocates. Now, by the way, the people in the story here, they're older. Okay, so you got a guy who's quote-unquote semi-retired. You've got another woman who, I don't think they give her age and they don't show her picture, but of the photos, at least, of these people they're out there, they're advocating for people using cash. These are people that appear to be 50, 60, 70 years
the modern day
old.
Productive working class people.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they're having rallies and such, and let's see here. The World Economic Forum, they said, called the allegations about it false and quote-unquote very regrettable. Of course, they're known to lie. Among pro-cash sympathizers are the brothers behind Right Said Fred. You remember their song in 1991, I'm Too Sexy?
Yeah, I do.
Remember that one?
Yeah.
They made it back in the news, I remember, during COVID because they were questioning the whole COVID narrative.
Yeah, good for them.
Yeah, they were like a few of just, I think it was Eric Clapton, Right Said Fred, and there was like... was another guy that made a song. Actually, some of these guys actually made songs,
and a few bands actually broke up. I can't remember. There's a guy. I can't remember his name. But like, there's like 3 or 4 like major bands that they like. The Offspring, it was kicked their drummer out because
he wouldn't get
vaccinated because he had Guillain-Barré syndrome, and his doctor said no, you can't take that vaccine because he was actually going to go, but he's like, hey guys, I got this disease, I got to check with my doctor, and he kicked him out of the band.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
So now he's drumming with Tim Pool, which I think is awesome.
Van Morrison, that was the other one. Van Morrison wrote some protest songs during that whole thing. So Right Said Fred, back in the news here. Fred Fairbrass is one of them. He said, we're working with an old people's home and a homeless shelter. Without cash, those people are absolutely stranded. Brett Scott, author of Cloud Money, Cash Cards, Crypto, and the War for Our Wallets, says the power struggle is set to grow over how people pay for stuff. McKinsey projects the digital payments industry will be worth $3 trillion by 2026, much of it generated in Asia, particularly China, where, of course, if you've been paying attention, you know that China has a state system for payments, essentially, and they have, of course, the what do they call it? Social score, social credit score.
Social credit score, yep.
So if you do bad, according to the Chinese government, then they can lock you out of the payment system and essentially make you a non-person because there's just such widespread acceptance of digital payments there in China. It's probably a mandate. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if there's still a cash option in some places in China.
I'm sure there's a black market.
Yeah.
There has to be.
But cash, Scott argues, provides freedom, anonymity, and security. Well, I mean, kinda, and that's where like these guys are kind of on the cusp. What they're doing is good. I'm not criticizing what they're doing, but of course it doesn't go far enough.
It's still fiat money,
right? That's the problem.
You're still supporting war and the parasite. You know,
it doesn't really give you freedom, right? It gives you maybe freedom from the banking system. Okay, that's some sort of freedom, but you don't have freedom from the politicians.
It's got a little bit of privacy to it.
Yeah, well, that's true. Anonymity is true, but freedom from the bankers, no, you don't have freedom from the central bankers in that case if you're using cash. But it is still a step in the right direction. Others say it can help track spending. Jenny Whitaker says it's easier to stick to your budget when you're at the supermarket. She was out shopping at the time. She said, if I'm using my card or phone, it would quickly get out of control. And that's because, you just don't, even if you're using a debit card or whatever, how often are you actually checking the balance of the account? Before you go into the grocery store, if you're going to pay with a debit card, do you check your bank account before you go in?
Never use debit card.
Well, I'm asking the wrong guy here, but I'm just, asking the listener out there, how often do you actually assess how much money is in the account? A lot of people probably don't. They just go in, they figure they can spend it, they go in and they try it, and if it works, then they complete the checkout. If not, then they try the other card, right?
Convenience store I frequent quite a bit. Actually, I use crypto all the time there because
is this all in one?
Well, yeah. Anyways, I was talking to one of the girls working the cash register, and there was 2 people in front of me. Their cards got denied, and they just left their stuff.
Oh, wow.
And they left, and I go, does that happen a lot? She goes, like the past half a year,
more often,
it's like really often, and it was like, what was it? It was so it was like March, and the girl said to me, yeah, on the long months, it happens more often than last week. So like
the long months,
31-day month versus a 28-day month.
Okay.
If you get X amount of dollars a month is your allowance or pay or
welfare
whatever,
or
anything. It's on the long months you got less dollars per day to spend, and that's the way she explained it to me, and I hadn't really ever contemplated that before.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
but also people are having a tougher time, right?
Oh, definitely.
That's another thing that's changed in the last half a year to a year is, the inflation is a real thing.
I mean, at least if you're going to write a check, you would probably, like, I know when my dad had a checkbook, I've never had one.
Well, you got to register there. You know how much.
Right. It was like, oh, okay, I got this left, because he would, he would write in what he spent, and then he would subtract it and have it, keep on carrying it down.
Well, and that's another difference between using a card and cryptocurrency.
Right.
When you're using cryptocurrency, you got your wallet balance right there in front of you. You know which crypto you're choosing based on how much is in the account or whatever, and then so you're always aware in that case of what you're spending. Whereas with that card, you have no idea unless you make a habit of constantly checking the balance. Let's go to the phones here. We got Gigi on the line in South Carolina. Gigi, you're on Free Talk Live with Ian and Jay.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Gigi.
Number one, I found out that a particular grocery store in my city called Harris Teeter takes Dash.
What? Are you serious?
Remember you mentioned that a couple of evenings ago?
No, I don't.
Dash.
I've never heard of
went
Harris.
To a restaurant.
No, it's interesting though. It's a store I've never even heard of.
Well,
that doesn't mean they don't.
That's
cool.
just a little sidebar.
All right.
The real reason why I'm calling this evening is because quite a long time ago, I was listening to a particular evening's broadcast of your wonderful program, and all of the hosts on that evening were talking about the disgusting thing that the city of Minneapolis did to a senior citizen widow who fell behind on her property taxes, and the city confiscated her condo and sold it and did not give her any of the proceeds that would have gone to her, rightly so.
Wow.
P.S. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States.
Okay.
And today it was a unanimous verdict. The opinion was written by Chief Justice Roberts. All of the justices concurred, saying the city had no right to do that. And furthermore, they owe this lady, 95 years old currently and still alive, $25,000 because that should have been her share of the money. And they further stated unanimously that a city does not have the right to confiscate someone's property.
Wait, what? I want to hear more about this. Hang on, Gigi.
Agree.
Hang on. Because, I doubt they're overturning property taxes here. I want to find out more about this story. It is apparently breaking news as of today. We'll learn more about it, and you can share your thoughts as well. We can also weigh back in on the cash discussion. If you want to jump into that, you can, and bring up anything you want here on Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone? You forgot to download our archive? and you have no data connection. You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The leader of the far-right Oath Keepers militia group has been sentenced to 18 years in prison over his role in the January the 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. It's the most severe punishment so far of over 1,000 cases stemming from the attack. U.S. correspondent Ira Spitzer has more.
A federal judge sentenced Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes to 18 years on seditious conspiracy and other charges. In handing down the sentence, the judge called Rhodes an ongoing threat to what he called the very fabric of our democracy. The Yale Law School graduate and former Army paratrooper founded the far-right militia group in 2009. During the trial last year, prosecutors described how the 58-year-old had mobilized his followers to storm the Capitol in a violent effort to overturn the results of the 2020 election and keep Donald Trump in power. Speaking in court before the sentencing, Rhodes called himself a political prisoner and reiterated his support for Trump. Ira Spitzer, San Francisco.
U.S. President Joe Biden says he believes a deal will be reached to raise the country's debt ceiling, saying the two sides had made progress but that negotiations continue. Republicans want to roll back government spending, but President Biden and Democrats do not. The credit rating agency Fitch has put the U.S. on Rating Watch Negative, reflecting the uncertainty around the possibility of a first-ever default. President Biden reiterated that the only way to move forward is to find a bipartisan agreement.
Speaker McCarthy and I have had several productive conversations, and our staffs continue to meet as we speak, as a matter of fact, and they're making progress. I've made it clear time and again defaulting on our national debt is not an option. The American people deserve to know that the Social Security payments will be there.
Some parents in Texas are finding a new book in their children's backpacks this week. Winnie the Pooh's Stay Safe. It's a new book about what to do in an active shooting, teaching kids to run, hide and fight. Tony Waterman has more from Texas.
The book was sent home with children as young as 4 in the Dallas area, parents say, with no warning or follow-up discussion. The illustrated book features Winnie the Pooh and some of his friends telling kids what to do during an active shooter situation. Things like, if danger is near, do not fear. Hide like Pooh does until the police appear. Pooh, in this scene, is seen burying his head in a pot of honey. Some parents and teachers say they find the book disturbing, especially since it was sent home the same week as the 1-year anniversary of the Uvalde school shooting, where 21 people were killed.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more detail today at that landmark decision by the European Union earlier this week to fine Meta, Mark Zuckerberg's tech conglomerate, a record €1.2 billion for privacy violations that took place in a massive data breach. At issue, data that was transmitted across the Atlantic to the United States. In addition to the fine, Meta has been ordered to stop transmitting data to America no later than this October. It all relates to new EU laws in 2018 that put checks and balances on the data that tech companies could store and transfer. Suzanne Lynch is chief Brussels correspondent for Politico.
What happened to both the regulators and the companies was that the technology was changing so much and so fast that the rules that were written down were not able to keep up. But this is on the back of a ruling a couple of years ago about the legal framework by which EU data is transferred to the US. And really the big picture here is stretches back to Edward Snowden, and people remember that controversy about snooping by US intelligence services. And privacy campaigners have now really successfully argued that people's data should be protected, and it shouldn't be open to that kind of intelligence snooping that we know did go on in the United States.
Meta is appealing the judgment, calling this week's ruling unjustified and unnecessary. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news, again. The leader of the far-right Oath Keepers militia group has been sentenced to 18 years in prison over his role in the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. U.S. President Joe Biden says he believes a deal will be reached to raise the country's debt ceiling. The United Nations has announced a $2.4 billion pledge to provide life-saving and life-sustaining assistance for nearly 32 million people across the Horn of Africa. And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
If you're a parent, chances are you know all about the Spooky Truth books, with subjects ranging from shadowy fraternal organizations to mind-controlling TV shows. Kids can't get enough of this series of short, scary children's novels.
And Spooky Truth author K.L. Graves is joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Now, my kids just love these books. In just 4 years, you put out 25 books. It came from Tower 7, Curse of the Chemtrails, The Zionist Who Cried Holocaust.
Now, this stuff has really been catching on. Over 40 million copies sold, so many bestsellers out there.
I've been thrilled. Before this series, I was self-publishing pamphlets and handing them out on the train. Now I get emails from teachers and parents all the time telling me that my books are all their kids can talk about.
Oh, well, it's true. My son used to hate to read. Now he's holed up in the basement with these Spooky Truth books all day and night. Says he never watches TV, doesn't even want tap water anymore. He just loves reading so much.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the second hour here. The phones are open if you want to join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can weigh in on the discussion about cash. Apparently there's a group of activists out there that are advocating that people do not abandon cash. Stick with it. Keep paying for things in cash. And don't make the shift over to all debit or credit or some sort of online payment system. We can continue that discussion here tonight. It's Ian.
And Jay Noon.
But Gigi called in with an interesting Supreme Court decision. Gigi on the line in South Carolina, and you were just kind of recapping this decision that was a 9-0, which is pretty rare, especially on a politically, divided court. 9-0, unanimous decision. Let me just recap this, and you correct me if I got anything wrong, Gigi. An old lady who's now 94 years old.
No, 95, sir.
Okay, well, that's what it says here in the Reuters report. But anyway, this elderly woman was kicked out of her home because she
was evicted. Yep. Legally, the word is evicted.
Yep, she was not paying the property tax, maybe because she couldn't afford it, because, it's expensive. And,
that's right.
And the city, or the county that houses Minneapolis, decided they were going to what they call tax sale the house. And Jay, you can probably relate to this story.
Oh yeah, I got a personal experience.
Bottom line, they threw her out of her home.
Yes, and then they sold it to somebody else. They took in like $60,000 or something like that, and apparently she had quote unquote owed $50,000 in.
She owed $60,000. The SCOTUS report states, based upon Chief Justice Roberts writing the opinion for the court, $60,000 was owed. However, she was legally entitled to a minimum of $25,000 because it could have depicted her in good faith attempting to make payments towards back property taxes as opposed to throwing her out.
Yeah, this old lady just couldn't pick enough cotton for master.
Mm-hmm.
And
ain't that the truth?
And she wasn't able to produce enough energy, so they took probably the last thing that she really had, right?
Yeah,
yes,
probably.
Sir.
Now, the numbers here are a little different in this story, Gigi. It says that it was $40,000 is what they got for the auction of the house, and then they claimed that the older lady owed $15,000, so that remained. They gave $25,000 after the quote unquote tax debt was paid back, because that's the alleged reason they steal people's property is, oh, well, you owe us this arbitrary amount of money that we've been, stealing from you for years, and so therefore, since you won't pay, we're just going to take the most valuable thing in your life, besides your kids or whatever. We're going to take your house from you, sell it at an auction.
The IRS is notorious for auctioning people's, not just the house, but the contents in the house as well.
Yeah, no, you don't get anything for that, I don't think, out of this process. It's just whatever the house goes for, then they're supposed to give, in most places, they're supposed to give the previous owner whatever the remainder is
That's
after.
right, and Chief Justice Roberts said she should have been given a minimum of $25,000 that could have enabled this lady to make payments towards getting her home back and living somewhere.
Well, it would have helped her, I'm sure, to get the $25,000. But the interesting thing here, and Gigi, thanks for bringing this up here. I appreciate you calling in about this tonight.
Well, I learned about it from this program many months ago.
This story?
Yes, sir.
Oh.
One evening, I was listening to the program, and it was being reviewed and discussed on this show.
Interesting. I must not have been on that night.
So when I heard about the verdict today, I remembered, hey,
good.
I first learned about this on Free Talk Live.
Thank you for the follow-up, because we never probably would have heard about it if it weren't for your call.
Well, I pay attention, and I'm a news junkie.
Good. Well, I'm glad you're out there, Gigi, and thank you for calling in tonight with that story. So the important thing to know here is this hasn't overturned property taxes. This isn't the Supreme Court saying property taxes are wrong or illegal or anything like that. No, they are totally fine with property taxes. They're just saying that apparently in the states, including Minnesota, and there's more than one place where this happens. They don't give a list in the Reuters story, but Minnesota is not the only place in which there is a system like this, where they essentially punish you for not paying taxes by just keeping all of the money at the tax sale. Now,
Massachusetts
you went through
does
this.
that also.
Yeah, I was going to say, you actually went through this yourself.
Yes.
Okay. More than a decade ago or something like that?
2010?
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah,
11?
something like that. Sounds about right. Where you hadn't paid taxes on a property that you owned in Palmer, Mass.
Yeah, I had it for right about 10 years.
Mm-hmm. And what did they claim in your case? How much did they claim you owed them?
So they claimed that I owed them $136,000 for not paying property tax on a house that I bought for $79,000.
Mm-hmm.
For I think it was 10 years. And when they came after me, I demanded a jury trial. And they're like, "No, you don't get a jury trial. You waived your right to a jury trial."
What?
And I says, "No, I have not waived my right anywhere. How does the state become the arbiter of whether or not I waive my rights? The government is instituted to protect my rights." And that's when I started learning we don't have governments anymore. We have municipal corporations calling themselves governmental agencies. Anyways, in Massachusetts, there is absolutely no way you can get a jury trial for a property tax taking.
Wow.
And so I've been asking this question in New Hampshire, and they're like, I'm like, so like I asked the tax town clerk, I says, so when someone takes their property and they're like, "No, you can't take my property," I go, "Do you guys go like get a jury trial?" She goes, no, we just get a summary something judgment or something, she says, and we just they do what's called a tax lien taking or a tax title taking or something.
Yep.
And essentially it's like they're like, yeah, there's no jury trial for this, and so
it's usually up to the city council or whatever.
Well, it just goes to show that that you don't have any rights and you're basically a slave.
Yep, sure does.
And it's very clear. And so like because one of the fundamentals of American this republic that the founding fathers created, that we all own our land and it's ours. But the problem is sometime in 1939, all the private properties got put on the tax rolls because in 1932 the government went bankrupt. At the Geneva Convention, FDR filed bankruptcy on behalf of the United States Corporation, and all of these municipal corporations, calling themselves City of Keene, Town of Henniker, whatever, all essentially became became debt collectors to pay off this bankruptcy debt. And all these properties got some kind of lien on them. And I actually went down this rabbit hole pretty hardcore in Hampden County, Massachusetts. Every single property in a little village of Thorndike, Massachusetts, and a little village of Bondsville, Massachusetts. Bondsville is where my house was, where you guys came down to that day a decade ago.
I remember.
And every single piece of property for 2 days in 1939 in the archives, going down in the basement of the deed hall. We researched a bunch of this. Was owned by it was called Bondsville Realty Company. And then in where my dad's farm was, that was Thorndike. That property was owned for 2 days. A grantor deed was granted to Joseph Fury Esquire, who was a lawyer who had a law firm in town that day. And he was also had something to do with Bondsville Realty Corporation, which Bondsville Realty Corporation was granted the deed to my house. And then 2 days later, there was a deed from the Bondsville Realty Corporation to something O'Connor was the guy's name, the same owner, back to it. And so I started looking, and they got these indexes. So I looked up Joseph A. Fury Esquire. I remember this. I was like, wow, this guy owned every single property in town for 2 days.
That's suspicious.
How did that happen? This was 1939. So I had him. So the guy doing the research with me was this old Mexican dude, really cool guy. He was really into history and research. He worked for the county, and he worked in that archives department. He's like, wow, this is amazing. Well, how could this happen? You know, how could the same? And
There's no way he could be that wealthy. There's no way that one guy could just come in there and buy everything up.
Right. So this particular thing on my dad's farm, that was Joseph Fury Esquire, got granted the property for 2 days in 1939, and then it was granted back. I said to the so I bring it upstairs, a copy of it, and I go, hey, what's this document? How did this happen? And they go, oh, that's a mortgage. They said, yeah, that's a lien on a property. I'm like, oh, okay. They probably got some kind of mortgage. I'm like, all right, let's find the mortgage. Let's find the lien. And so the lady's like, oh, no problem, we'll do that. And well, we really can't find this lien, this mortgage, and there's really no mortgage reference. It just went from there's elements missing. So I set up a date with the actual registrar of deeds. His name was Ash. I can't remember his. Okay. Ash is like a Western Mass crime family. Like his cousin or brother is the sheriff, and they're all politically connected. And they all
good old boys.
Yeah, and they're accused about running drugs with the state police and the whole 9 yards. And it's all towing and wrecking companies that help the cops out. I mean, it's just everywhere. Like where you grow up, you just learn who all the criminals are. Sure. And it's just. Anyways, the Ash family, the one guy runs the jail, the other guy runs the deed hall.
Yep.
And so it's supposed to, Donald J. Ash is the guy's name. I'm supposed to have a meeting with him. So I go to have the meeting, and they're like, oh, no, you don't have a meeting. He's out of the office today. And I'm like, oh, can we reschedule a meeting? And they're like, I'm like, when's he next available? And they're like, we'll call you when he's available. I go, no, I go, you probably have an opening, right? Can we just schedule a meeting? And then I have two. Now this is in like the 4th floor of the courthouse.
Yep.
Where like that deeds hall thing is, and Superior Court and whatever courts are downstairs, Springfield, Mass. The courthouse there, and so all of a sudden, like I'm talking to this lady, and she's kind of like, and then I hear, "Excuse me, Mr. Noon." And I'm like, oh, cool. Ash is here. I'm going to have a talk with him, right? And it's 2 sheriff's deputies, and they're asking me to leave the building.
Whoa.
And
that was the end of that lead, huh?
So I went down. So as I'm walking downstairs with the guys, I'm telling them what's happening, and they're like, yeah, right. I'm like, I got it right here. Why don't you go see what this is about? Because I had it because the week before I was in there, I had this certified copy of all this stuff. And I go, why don't you go talk to the Mexican guy downstairs? I forget his name. He was a great guy. And he'll tell you all about it. And, they all know each other. They all work in the building. And and then I went in there another time with my friend Gene. And, about 2 months later to kind of work on this and talk about it. And so I go up to the desk and I'm like, hey, can I get a meeting with, someone that can explain, because they actually have these archives like somewhere where you can go view them. Like the original real archives, because the books you're flipping through are like books that were made like back in the 60s or in the 40s, and your real documents are somewhere else.
They're copies. Okay.
Yep. And as soon as I start telling the lady what I'm looking for and I show it to her, she goes, oh, we've been through this before, she says. And I go, no, I haven't.
Who's we?
Yeah, right. That's what she said to me. I'm like, no, I haven't been able to see the original archives. And so I just never really pursued it anymore. I'm like, heck with Massachusetts. I'm planning on going to New Hampshire someday anyways.
This was after you lost your house, was when you were digging into this, right?
It was as the court case was going on, as I was fighting for it, as I was, all this stuff. So there is no way to get a jury trial in a tax taking in Massachusetts is basically what I found out. So this whole, like, you can't take property without judgment of peers stuff of the Constitution, obviously the Constitution doesn't apply. And, you don't have a constitutional form of government is basically the
it's just
bottom line.
it's just ruled by men. It's completely arbitrary, ruled by men. They do whatever it is they want to do. And every now and then you can call them on it. And every now and then a court will rule in a way that, in this case, this lady who's now 94, amazingly, she's still alive after having gone all the way up through the Supreme Court. Maybe she's going to walk away with a $25,000 check after all is said and done. But
I hope she's awarded some punitive damages.
I don't know. I think she'd probably have to countersue for that, right? Because the Supreme Court can't just come down and say, give this lady $12 million.
Now that went all the way to the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And just imagine what it took to get there.
That's what I'm saying.
The steps
How many
of appeals.
years? How many years has this been going on?
So now she has to appeal it in the local court, and then she has to appeal it maybe in the state court, in state appeals court, and then she appeals it to the Supreme Court of that state, and then you appeal it to the federal. I don't know if you go straight to appeals court, but basically it was like you had to do like
2016. So this was 2016 was when the house was sold at auction. So almost, not quite a decade ago, but most of a decade ago. And according to the story here, it's 13 other states had this policy, which just lets the government sell a house that's quote unquote in arrears for taxes and keep the entirety of the proceeds for their own benefit. So that's what's been overturned here in a 9-0 decision by the Supreme
I blame
Court.
for the the suffering of this old woman and other people? I believe all the parasites that work in government. And even the people that are sending their kids to public schools, you are engaging in acts of literally violence against threats of violence, anyways, against taxpayers. In fact, I had armed men, like literally like a SWAT team, showed up at my house to remove me from my house. And
6 a.m.
Yeah, I was like, just a little before 6. I woke up to like the entire Palmer police force and a bunch of state cops and a couple of, and they're like, you got to get out of there. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go back upstairs and get some clothes on. And they're like, we brought a U-Haul truck for you. And they brought a U-Haul truck.
They actually let you take your stuff out of the house?
They had a whole moving crew.
Whoa.
They're like, Jay, just tell these guys, what to do, what to box up. And they're like,
where'd you take it?
I brought it up to the farm.
Wow.
I just put it all into a trailer at the farm. But they were
crazy.
like,
I'm surprised they even did that.
And like every cop that I knew like couldn't look me in the eye. They're like, dude, I'm really sorry this happened to you. And they're like, and like because a lot of the cops actually like had earned my respect and liked me because first off I was a firefighter.
Right.
So, I was on that fire department for just a few weeks shy of 20 years.
Right. And wasn't that right across the street? Like not
Yeah,
far
and that was
down
one thing. That's actually the reason I really bought the house is because it was literally like 100-yard dash to the fire station. I was really into the fire station back then and doing that stuff. And the fire department was a lot of fun. But the thing is just, there's like, just no jury trial. They just take it.
They just took the house, took it down to a tax sale, sold it to some private dude, as I recall, and then of course you said the house was worth less than probably what they got.
So they wanted like $136,000, and I think the house sold for like $19,000. But what was really hilarious about that, so you guys came down, and you got arrested down there.
I did,
at the auction because when they were viewing the house, there was, it was like you guys came down several times.
Yeah.
Pete Air, I believe.
From copblock.org.
I think even Adamo was down once. I know, I got a picture of me, you, and Mark Edge out in front of the house.
Wow, they only sold that thing for $19,000.
That's all it brought. Because I'm like, hey, you're buying stolen property. Like, as people are walking in to look at the house, I'm like, this is stolen property.
Nice.
And I'm just out there to the sidewalk telling people it's stolen property. And I remember the Pete Air did Pete and Adamo put together a nice little video of that whole deal. And you go into town hall. You're recording the the auctioneer or the guy from the auction company, and he just looked like this slimy Boston politician.
Right.
And I don't think you call him slimy, but you like he just looked like a guy that like you didn't want to ride in an elevator with because he's going to hell, and you don't want to be caught with him when he goes there, like a lobbyist, corporate lobbyist.
Right.
But and then you go videotape in town hall, and they just pulled some signs out of the printer and they taped them up on the glass door. No video recording in town hall, and you walk right in there and you're just recording, and Pete's recording, and
snatched me up.
Yeah, Pete asked one of the fat cops in town, this guy Ray Tenzar.
Yeah, he's the one that arrested me.
Yeah. He's such a D-bag. I hope you're listening, Ray. Piece of turd. Anyways, he I
ended up getting a check out of all that.
Yeah,
by the way.
so he arrests you, but like. So he was a guy, this video is so hilarious. I'm just like cracking up thinking about it. You're like, you said something about, hey, you guys have the exclusive monopoly on violence in town. How does it feel to be a gangster? And like, he just couldn't help himself but smile, a poopy and grin ear to ear.
Yeah.
He's such a psychopath.
He knew it was
true. You know how many
yeah.
girls complained about him and all the crazy stuff with that guy.
I can only imagine.
But anyway, and he was, he was just an example of a liability to the town of Palmer because you get charged with some stupid disorderly conduct charge,
Right.
2 of them. I don't remember what they are, but you literally said to the to Judge Poehler, Patricia Poehler at the courthouse, you're like, I'll pay your $50 fine if you allow me to donate to a local charity. Like, how about the Palmer Food Bank? I would like to write them a check right now, is pretty much what you said. And they're like, no.
Nope.
So the next court hearing, they're like, here, Ian, here's a check for $5,000. Please don't sue us.
That's right. Well, yeah, that's right. Thanks to the ACLU of Massachusetts for taking that case.
That was great.
Let's go to the phones here. Major Payne's on the line in Michigan. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Major.
Hey, guys. Well, I got something on the cash and plastic debacle there, but I also got to give you some quick breaking news. Okay. The leader of the Proud Boys got the most serious sentence of the January 6th, what I used to call wheelchair or walker rebellion.
I heard 18 years.
Yeah, 18 years, dude.
There's got to be a presidential candidate who's got to step up and be like, I will pardon all these guys. I mean,
I think Trump's been hinting at it. I'm not sure if he's come right out and said it. But
just say it,
wait
man.
a minute, just to clarify, did you say the Proud Boys or Oath Keepers? Because the guy was from Oath Keepers.
Okay, I had that when I was bouncing that marble around between my ears, and I couldn't remember which one. So thank you.
Yep. Yeah, 18 years.
I heard that on NPR today, and NPR is such garbage. The way they were going about how he was like, terrorizing Congress and all this stuff. Come on.
Yeah, I don't know the guy personally, but I know we've met some Oath Keeper types over the years, and they seem to be genuine former government people who swore an oath to uphold the Constitution, and they say to themselves that meant something to them. And so
this guy evidently was a former paratrooper and whatnot.
Yeah, they want to hold the government accountable through whatever legal means, and I don't think this guy was accused of anything violent, right? Like, what were they saying he did?
It's basically all conspiring.
Yeah,
he's the leader.
Typical.
So Oath Keepers. I don't know if you've dealt with any Oath Keepers.
Chris Riedman used to be Oath Keeper.
Yep. So there's this other guy, Dave Kopaz. He has a YouTube show he does called Red Pill Politics, and he was in the Oath Keepers. And we had it in 2011. We had a tornado come through Palmer, Brimfield, and Munson, Mass. Just destroyed a bunch of stuff. So Dave, being an Oath Keeper, basically activated the Oath Keeper network, and guys showed up from like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maine, like pickup trucks and chainsaws, and just started cutting trees out of people's driveways. And they're like, "Oh, people like you from FEMA?" And we're like, and the guy's like, "No, we're from Oath Keepers." And they're like, "Oh, that's awesome. We'd rather have you here than FEMA anyways." And just everybody was so happy that like there was a bunch of like guys helping out.
Major, hang on. I know you said you had comments on the cash card situation. We'll continue with that discussion here. And the phones are open as always. If you want to join us, the number is 603-283-6160. You can bring up absolutely anything that's on your mind. It's Ian and Jay here. 603-283-6160. More Free Talk Live coming up.
Do you ever say, I could care less when you really mean the opposite. You mean to say, I couldn't care less. It's a common mistake. You are judged by how you speak, especially if you're looking for work, with so many more applicants than openings now. But even if you're not, avoiding common misstatements will help you make the most of the dozens of conversations and transactions that crowd your daily routine. So whatever you say, don't say whatever as a single word sentence. It's the most annoying expression in the American English language, according to a recent poll. And avoid cliches like the plague. Just kidding. But seriously, at the end of the day, you'll want to avoid this scenario, sounding like everyone else. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The leader of the far-right Oath Keepers militia group has been sentenced to 18 years in prison over his role in the January the 6th insurrection at the US Capitol. It's the most severe punishment so far of over 1,000 cases stemming from the attack. US correspondent Ira Spitzer has more.
A federal judge sentenced Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes to 18 years on seditious conspiracy and other charges. In handing down the sentence, the judge called Rhodes an ongoing threat to what he called the very fabric of our democracy. The Yale Law School graduate and former Army paratrooper founded the far-right militia group in 2009. During the trial last year, prosecutors described how the 58-year-old had mobilized his followers to storm the Capitol in a violent effort to overturn the results of the 2020 election and keep Donald Trump in power. Speaking in court before the sentencing, Rhodes called himself a political prisoner and reiterated his support for Trump. Ira Spitzer, San Francisco.
US President Joe Biden says he believes a deal will be reached to raise the country's debt ceiling, saying the two sides had made progress but that negotiations continue. Republicans want to roll back government spending, but President Biden and Democrats do not. The credit rating agency Fitch has put the US on Rating Watch Negative, reflecting the uncertainty around the possibility of a first-ever default. President Biden reiterated that the only way to move forward is to find a bipartisan agreement.
Speaker McCarthy and I have had several productive conversations, and our staffs continue to meet as we speak, as a matter of fact, and they're making progress. I've made it clear time and again defaulting on our national debt is not an option. The American people deserve to know that the Social Security payments will be there.
Some parents in Texas are finding a new book in their children's backpacks this week. Winnie the Pooh's Stay Safe. It's a new book about what to do in an active shooting, teaching kids to run, hide and fight. Tony Waterman has more from Texas.
The book was sent home with children as young as 4 in the Dallas area, parents say, with no warning or follow-up discussion. The illustrated book features Winnie the Pooh and some of his friends telling kids what to do during an active shooter situation. Things like, if danger is near, do not fear. Hide like Pooh does until the police appear. Pooh, in this scene, is seen burying his head in a pot of honey. Some parents and teachers say they find the book disturbing, especially since it was sent home the same week as the 1-year anniversary of the Uvalde school shooting, where 21 people were killed.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live. The phones are open and you can join the show. The number is 603-283-6160. It's Ian and Jay here tonight. That's 603-283-6160. We've got a story that we started the show out with tonight talking about people that are sick and tired of this press towards more electronic payments. They want to reassert the fact that cash is a good thing, that it protects your privacy. It's still, of course, a bad thing in the fact that it is allows you to be victimized by inflation, but that's another story. I still think what they're doing is of some value, and we can talk more about that coming up here. In fact, I know Major Payne said he had something to say about it But also, I want to let you know that this hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash, which is digital cash. And Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. They've kept to that vision from the beginning of Dash, which was some time ago. Dash is actually one of the oldest cryptocurrencies out there. It's almost been around for a decade now. And it's widely available on exchanges and in multi-crypto wallets. Dash can be used for less than 1 cent per transaction as far as the fee, because anytime you spend cryptocurrency, there's always a network fee that they want to hit you with. You spend Bitcoin, you're looking at like $2 median fee right now is what the Bitcoin fees are. It's crazy expensive.
I got a transaction right now on my phone that is 13 days old. It's like $75.
A Bitcoin transaction.
Yep.
It hasn't confirmed in 13 days.
13 days.
Wow. So there's serious problems with Bitcoin as a network being used for payments, but Dash doesn't have that problem. In fact, they've got some really cool features that ensure Dash is undefeated as the most useful cryptocurrency in the marketplace. From a technical standpoint, Dash transactions are irreversible, and its network is protected from the dreaded 51% attack by their chain locks technology. There's no need to wait for confirmation before considering a Dash transaction complete, so it's great for merchants. And big thanks to the Dash Decentralized Autonomous Organization for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. You can visit dash.org to learn more about Dash. That's dash.org. And coming up on Saturday night, we're actually going to have one of the Dash people on the show to talk about, well, what happened this week. There was some interesting news with Dash. There was a technical problem for like the first time in a decade, basically, on Monday. So he'll give us kind of some background on that. And he actually really wants to talk about how to transition away completely from the banking system, how to basically put banks out of business. So I'm really interested in having that discussion. I'm looking forward to that. That'll be Saturday night, starting at 7 o'clock Eastern Time or shortly thereafter here on Free Talk Live. Let's bring Major Payne back on the line in Michigan. Major, you had something you wanted to say about this whole cash movement and or the digital payments.
Well, not so much the digital payments. I guess they would be inclusive as far as it's part of the plastic empire. But this whole plastic thing is part of the dumbing down of America. It's a process that's been going on for decades. Mm-hmm. I've been watching it like a fish can't get out of the bowl to attack the fly he wants, you know. Mm-hmm. But most people live paycheck to paycheck, better than 50% of the population of this country.
That's correct.
You know? And so once you get into that credit card debacle, especially if you can't, you know, you violate their original code and go from 7% to 27% or whatever, you know, you're just a cow they ain't got to feed that they get to milk every day.
Yeah, no doubt. There's a huge problem with debt in this country, and the credit cards, you know, that's probably one of the number one issues that people have. They don't know if they have them, they don't really know how to use them responsibly, and that's what they count on. They count on people being irresponsible and then being able to, as you say, milk them for the rest of their lives for those interest payments.
Well, when I was a very young warthog, like 6, 8 years old, I got a very rude reckoning on what the system can do to you. I had been scrounging pop bottles for a whole summer, okay? And finally had enough to fill up my little red wagon. So I drug it over to the corner store there called the Big Top, shaped just like a circus tent.
Okay.
It was a cool place. But anyway, so it was 2 cents a bottle, right? The very next day, it went to a nickel.
Whoa. Oh, man.
Talk about a little kid feeling screwed. I think I got like $2.85, which the next day would have been a $10 bill.
Could have been, yeah. Bummer.
I used to collect cans all the time. We would go to horse auctions when I was a little kid, and I would take a piece of baling twine, and I would take the top of the can and just kind of bend it up like a 90 degree. Mm-hmm. And I would take the baling twine. It was just, you know, plastic twine or sisal twine, and I would just keep on putting cans through this baling twine and just drag them around, and then I would, you know, throw them in the gooseneck of a horse trailer. And I can remember having like this huge pile of cans and getting like, you know, $100 for it, you know, like filled up a trailer, you know, after like, you know, several months of this. And yeah, I did a lot of that as a kid.
Major, anything else you want to share?
The whole paper thing, it teaches you responsibility. And when you got to crack that last $100 bill in your wallet, it actually gives you physical pain that you're not going to feel when you hand over that piece of plastic.
Yeah, and that kind of comes back to what I was saying the guy from Goldback was pointing out about younger people these days who've never paid in cash. They've never had the experience of having to crack that last 100 or 20 or whatever it is that, never seen their money emptying out of their wallet. They've never felt the experience of actually exchanging something to receive goods back. They don't have that experience, and I think that's what the system promoters, the World Economic Forum, the big governments, the central banks, they're counting on that. They're counting on young people having zero experience with cash, so that once older folks pass away, they're going to be able to pull cash out of the economy. I think.
And the best thing I like about cash is the responsibility aspect of it. You lose that cash, it's all gone. If someone steals it from you, it's gone. If but the credit card or the debit card, you drop that thing, you lose that. You just go ask your mother for another one when you're a young kid. And that's another thing I've noticed is, I've definitely have had parents that have teenagers that be like, oh, Jimmy lost his debit card again. And I've had to get him like 6 of them, in the past year. And it's like, well, I'm like, why don't you make that man make him a responsible, right. Make that boy responsible so he grows up to be a responsible man. And give him cash, and if he loses his cash, then he lost his cash. Yeah. This is, and that's the other thing too. Is
it's like these parents buying their kids a car and then they crash it, and then they go and buy them another one.
The insurance buys them another one. Yeah.
Major.
Yeah. Well, we're right back to the dumbing down of America.
Yep.
My opening statement.
Thank you for the call tonight, Major. I appreciate it. Let's talk to Perry in California. Perry, you're on Free Talk Live with Ian and Jay.
Thank you very much. What I wanted to say is, first of all, the lady was 95, you said, right?
94 now. She was probably 86 at the time that she had her house stolen.
In my opinion, it doesn't matter what age she is. I think that the people that were involved in kicking her out of her home should be in jail. And the thing is, you see,
problem is they run the jail.
Our whole system. Well, that's it. Yeah. That's what I was just going to say. That the FBI, the CIA, all these, the higher echelon, they should be in jail. This whole thing, we have tyranny now. It's been going on for many years, but we're now. I mean, we got strong tyranny now in America. It's you can't even make this stuff up. But it's like everything's backwards. And we're allowing this to happen right before our own eyes.
Yeah.
Look at the riots. Look at now. This guy that's 18 years. They're going to give him 18 years. You said, right?
Oh yeah, Stuart Rhodes from the Oath Keepers, 18-year sentence.
But meanwhile, none of Ghislaine Maxwell's clients have been indicted or investigated. Oh. There was just a whole report I listened to a few days ago about how the FBI, as soon as Pedo Biden came in. They just, dumped the entire Clinton investigation. They destroyed all the evidence. I guess they were, doing some investigation on the Clintons, and then investigation on Hunter Biden was working on and I guess this just all came about, recent few days.
Yeah. Well, you see, in my opinion, they didn't even go after all the rioters that were literally killing cops and burning down buildings and car lots and everything else. They were destroying cities like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, you're talking about like in Minneapolis where people were burning buildings down in 2020?
The Summer of Love. All over. Yeah, they did it all over the country. And the thing is, they were leaning toward the left, but they wanted everything free. They said they should have all welfare, food stamps. Like they're going to do all these 25 million aliens that are coming in through the border. That Biden's allowing in.
Biden's not allowing people in the border. Well, he's cracking down just like Donald Trump did. I mean, it's basically a continuation of. I mean, that's just basically conservative talking points that you're sharing there. But your point about the riots.
Well, the last thing that what he's doing, what they're going to do is, they've lost some Democrats even because they're waking up to what's going on about big government. And the thing is that they're going to have those people, because 40 states are going to give them driver's licenses, they're going to let them vote, Democrat, because they're going to all see.
Well, here's the thing. This is the problem where the right-wingers get it wrong, Perry. Well, you can get to your one more thing here in a moment, but the problem with what the right-wingers get wrong here as far as immigration is concerned, a lot of those immigrants are conservatives. A lot of people from Mexico are culturally conservative people. They're Catholics. They've got family values. That whole thing.
I'm with you. I would allow people to come in like we were doing $1 million a year, but they're allowing now people that are terrorists. They've already caught terrorists. They've already caught gang members. They've already caught murderers. They've already caught.
That's just fear mongering, man. It's just fear-mongering.
No, this is not the way to do this. This is not the way to do
no,
this.
The way not to do things is to have a police state, and that's what you're advocating for. You're advocating for a police state. On one hand, you can see. Hold on now, Perry. On one hand, you can see how the police are doing the wrong thing when it comes to what's happening to Stuart Rhodes and the people on January 6th, but yet you want those very same cops to crack down on what is mostly peaceful people who are trying to come here to make a better life for themselves.
Okay, wait a minute. Are you saying you want to still give them welfare and
no,
cell
sir.
phones
That shouldn't
and cars
exist.
and all
No, I'm against welfare.
All of Health and Human Services needs to be axed.
That's the libertarian point of view. I agree with you to a great extent on what you're saying on that. But the thing is, what I'm worried about is by letting all these people that they are letting in criminals, okay? The thing is, we've already got them.
They are the criminals, dude. The people at the border, those are the criminals. The people who are in the Border Patrol uniforms, those are the criminals.
Yeah.
Those are the ones who are stripping away your right to travel. They're the ones stripping away your ability to leave if you want to leave, or come back if you want to come back, without having to jump through a bunch of hoops and prove your quote-unquote citizenship to some unaccountable bureaucrats who, if they want to strip you down, strip down your car, do whatever they want to do, there's not going to be any kind of accountability for them for doing that. You're fine with that, right?
So what do you want to do with fentanyl, by the way? I just want
with what?
Fentanyl?
I'm
thinking about this.
I want to make it legal.
They're bringing in tons of it.
I want to decriminalize. I want fentanyl to be regulated just like tomatoes, because it will eliminate that whole black market for the fentanyl. And right now, who's bringing in all the fentanyl? Well, according to Mike Gill, it's the governments that are bringing in the fentanyl. And so we know from Silver Dave, a former special forces who was over in Afghanistan, most of the heroin that was leaving Afghanistan was basically leaving Afghanistan via military DEA, being pumped into Europe, being pumped into the States. I mean, there was a time in this country where, like in any major city, you could get heroin cheaper than you could get a joint, basically. And the heroin was also easier for a 15-year-old to come up with than an actual Budweiser. And because it was just surged so high. And you'll see where the U.S., when they bring on their occupation of Afghanistan, you can just internet search this, Afghanistan, heroin, U.S., import or export or something, keywords. And you'll see, like, as soon as the United States starts occupying Afghanistan, the heroin production in Afghanistan goes insane, because when the particular gang that was occupying Afghanistan, the Taliban or whoever they are, and they would cut people's hands off if they were growing or participating in the opium.
But they're saying that 100,000 people a year are dying from fentanyl.
Yeah, and blame the war on drugs for that, by the way, because fentanyl was never a thing 20 years ago,
right,
Perry. You asked the question about fentanyl, and I would like to answer the question. Jay had a crack at it, and I want to remind you that the reason why fentanyl exists, the reason why crack cocaine exists, is because of the war on drugs, because the war on drugs prohibits all kinds of drugs, right, like cocaine or heroin.
Listen, I helped get the party on the ballot in California. I know about the Libertarian Party, believe me.
So then you understand that the war on drugs leads to people using harder drugs, right? You understand, Perry, hold on. You can't listen if you're talking, okay? So you understand, what you're saying is you understand that the war on drugs, drug prohibition, just like alcohol prohibition, led to stronger, harder forms of, more concentrated forms of those drugs, and led to drugs being cut with things like fentanyl. You understand that, right?
Well, I don't necessarily know if that's 100%.
I thought you said you spent time with the libertarians and you understood the libertarian viewpoint on the war on drugs.
I mean, I understand that they wanted open borders at one time, and then they wanted,
so you don't know anything about prohibition, drug prohibition?
Yes, I do know a little bit. I know that we've always had it illegal and
It wasn't always
not
illegal.
always.
100 years ago, heroin was not illegal.
Well, you're right. Yeah, no, that's true. I'm not talking about that far back. But anyhow,
well, we are talking about that far back because that far back, you didn't have a problem with fentanyl. Crack cocaine didn't exist. These things came about because
cocaine existed, but not crack.
Correct. It was crack that was developed in the same way that
by the CIA. Allegedly,
it was developed in the same way that hard liquor became very popular during alcohol prohibition. Because when you prohibit things, they go into the black market. They become more dangerous because you only have so much space to smuggle. So you want to get the harder stuff in that smuggling space, right? And so you make harder drugs as a result of that. So if you want to get rid of fentanyl, here's what you do. Here's what you do, Perry. All you do is you legalize heroin, you legalize, cocaine, you legalize all the things that are currently illegal, and you allow the marketplace to handle these things. Safety will increase dramatically. You will never see drugs being cut with something. If you go down to Walmart or Walgreens or whatever, and you buy, a bottle of aspirin, there's not like dope in the bottle of aspirin. You get exactly what it is you are expecting to buy. So that's how you get rid of fentanyl. And in fact, Dana, a gentleman we had on the show on Friday night last week from Vancouver, he's an activist up there who does absolutely amazing work. He had pointed out that in the marketplace, when you actually have legal products, they actually move towards not the harder use of those products, but the lighter use of those products. We've seen it with cannabis, for instance. So when cannabis was legalized, there became all these like much more harm reduction kind of ways to use cannabis. There's the edibles now. Instead of having to smoke the cannabis, you can just take a dose of it, and you can take a light dose if you want to.
Yeah.
There's now teas and sodas and things like that to allow you to take these things.
I'm for all that, anyways.
Okay. So you're for drug legalization.
No, well, let's put it this way. Let's say you got a drug addict, right? And there isn't anything that society can do to help this person, okay?
Actually, there is.
They're going to take these. No, let's just say, I'm just showing you a scenario. And then let's say that person gets so whacked out, he decides to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, okay?
Okay.
I'm for that, believe it or not. If that guy wants to jump off, I don't think anybody should try to stop him. Because I believe in individual liberty, so long as no one violates.
All right, so you're for legalizing suicide then?
Well, what I worry about is like with fentanyl, somebody taking it and let's say putting it in a drink at a college or somewhere at a bar near a college or something, and it kills somebody and they didn't even know it was in their drink. You know what I mean, or something like that.
You could do that with stuff
little things like that. I shouldn't worry about stuff like that. You're right, but I am for I do agree with your assessment. Believe me, I do. I do agree.
So you agree that we should end the war on drugs?
Just that when I hear, I'm hearing so much lately about. There's so many people dying from these fentanyl pills. It's not like heroin. It's not like all this other stuff out there. You know what I mean? It seems like it's a lot stronger. It's just killing. One pill can kill you. That's it. That's what they're saying.
Sure.
I got two things to comment on here.
Things.
So you said that you're concerned about someone wanting to basically murder somebody with fentanyl by dropping fentanyl into their drink.
Well, I'm not saying that'll happen. I'm saying it could happen.
Okay, I just want to tell you something. If somebody really wanted to do that, there is a product that they could go buy. I'm not going to say what it is. I'm not going to say where you can go get it, but they could go get it tomorrow at 7 a.m. in the morning right here in Keene, and they could take a half ounce of this product and they could drop it in a particular beverage, and that guy could drink that particular beverage, not even taste it, not even know what happened, and he will die an agonizing, painful death. And this particular product that you could buy at a store, a gallon of it costs $20, and a half ounce of it will kill you. And
wow.
I'm not going to say what it is on the air because I don't want to give any ideas. And then the other thing I want to make is, how do you help drug dealers? Well, if we look at the Kensington Street, Philadelphia videos where these people are walking around, it looks like a
in
clip
a daze
from The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
How do you help those people? How are those people getting drugs? They have an EBT card, electronic benefits transfer, provided to them by the Pennsylvania Department of Health and Human Services, and also subsidized by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. If those EBT cards did not work anymore, those people would not be able to just spend their several $100s a month that they get on whatever, on their drug of choice. They would be done. And maybe
they'd find a way.
Well, maybe they would find a way.
There's a way.
But if you're
they'll
that
start robbing,
out,
they'll start stealing, whatever they got to do.
You see the condition of these guys? They couldn't rob anybody, right? If they walked up to me or you, we could just break them in half. I mean, literally.
Push them over.
And the thing is, and then, that's why you shouldn't be anywhere near Philadelphia or Kensington, because when the system collapses and all the crackheads can't get their money and the heroin addicts and the dopers, they're because all the people that in Manchester, that are using all the drugs and the drug encampments there, so there's definitely some homeless people. And then you got some straight up drug addicts that are just, they're made comfortable enough by all the offerings of Health and Human Services.
Right.
So you see these like Venice Beach videos where they go interview the guy who's like tattooed from head to toe, and he's just like, yeah, man, I get $600 a month. Wake up in the morning, get out of my tent, go get high, go over there, and they feed me. The city got three meals for us a day right out there. California is great, man. I used to live in some cold city.
Yeah, you got to change the incentives. Yep. That's definitely
that's
true.
how you stop drugs. You stop giving money to people to buy them.
But as long as drugs are illegal, you're still going to have serious problems.
And you have to make them. You have to remove the prohibitions, and you have to stop with the welfare.
Right. That's it.
Health and Human Services is murdering people. Everybody that dies from fentanyl that is on welfare was killed by the state.
Go ahead, Perry.
You're absolutely right about a lot of what you're saying. I'm not going to disagree with you on all of this stuff. But I just, like I said, I do feel sorry for people that do die from these sort of substances.
Yeah, it's a tragedy. It's a personal tragedy, but it's not going to help those people to put them in a jail cell, right? That's not going to get them a better life.
Hey, by the way, can you play a bumper song by him, H.I.M.?
No.
Don't Thrill the Reaper?
No, it's a great song though, but no, we can't take bumper requests on this show. By the way, as far as like poisoning drinks and stuff, GHB used to be the drug for that. That's something that is also an illegal drug. They used to call it the date rape drug, and that is a concern that people have. But the fact is, GHB is illegal as well. But yet, the people that want to do date raping can still get their GHB and put it into people's drinks.
Is that what a roofie is? GHB?
Oh, is that the same thing?
There is a product that I saw on Shark Tank where this young lady invented this little cap type thing that's it stretches, and you could put it on like if you're out like these college students and stuff like that, you can put it over your cup, and it can keep people from putting anything in your cup. And
or just don't drink anymore at public facilities.
Well, one of the sharks, it fits around your wrist like a bracelet. But anyhow,
or just keep your drink with you and don't leave it alone.
Well, one of the sharks invested I don't know, it was $100,000 or whatever it was.
Wow.
in with this person, so that the product's out there.
All right. Hey, thanks, Perry, for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. The number, if you want to join the show, 603-283-6160. Always interesting to talk about immigration. It's just such an issue that gets people emotional, and they just don't understand.
Yeah, I wonder how many like actual immigrants he worked with. When I was in Colorado, I used to be a little more like him until I worked with the guys in Colorado, and those guys that were like these undocumented, illegally here, whatever, they were really like the best people I worked with out there. They were good family men, and they had good morals, and they had good structures. They're the kind of people I want as my neighbor, and they're a good foundation for society.
We got more coming up here, 603-283-6160. You can join us on Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
The heavy-handed language that you're speaking out against the government I never heard anything like this on the radio.
When the founding fathers decided that the government of England was no longer servicing their needs, they stopped paying their taxes first.
Don't you drive on the roads? Aren't you glad you're defended
Such a cliche.
From the foreigners?
Sir, they stole this man's property.
The foreigners are coming to get me.
Yeah, they stole these. These aren't foreigners I need to be defended from. It's these people down the street calling themselves government that are willing to steal my property from me and burn my house to the ground, which is what they did to this man.
It's not yours. The government owns it.
Really? Are you telling me, sir, that every one of us are actually serfs? We're actually subjects and slaves to the state? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, if it sounds good to you...
No, that doesn't sound good. I don't accept it. I'm a free man.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The leader of the far-right Oath Keepers militia group has been sentenced to 18 years in prison over his role in the January the 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. It's the most severe punishment so far of over 1,000 cases stemming from the attack. U.S. correspondent Ira Spitzer has more.
A federal judge sentenced Oath Keepers founder Stewart Rhodes to 18 years on seditious conspiracy and other charges. In handing down the sentence, the judge called Rhodes an ongoing threat to what he called the very fabric of our democracy. The Yale Law School graduate and former Army paratrooper founded the far-right militia group in 2009. During the trial last year, prosecutors described how the 58-year-old had mobilized his followers to storm the Capitol in a violent effort to overturn the results of the 2020 election and keep Donald Trump in power. Speaking in court before the sentencing, Rhodes called himself a political prisoner and reiterated his support for Trump. Ira Spitzer, San Francisco.
US President Joe Biden says he believes a deal will be reached to raise the country's debt ceiling, saying the two sides had made progress but that negotiations continue. Republicans want to roll back government spending, but President Biden and Democrats do not. The credit rating agency Fitch has put the US on Rating Watch Negative, reflecting the uncertainty around the possibility of a first-ever default. President Biden reiterated that the only way to move forward is to find a bipartisan agreement.
Speaker McCarthy and I have had several productive conversations, and our staffs continue to meet as we speak, as a matter of fact, and they're making progress. I've made it clear time and again defaulting on our national debt is not an option. The American people deserve to know that the Social Security payments will be there.
Some parents in Texas are finding a new book in their children's backpacks this week. Winnie the Pooh's Stay Safe. It's a new book about what to do in an active shooting, teaching kids to run, hide and fight. Tony Waterman has more from Texas.
The book was sent home with children as young as 4 in the Dallas area, parents say, with no warning or follow-up discussion. The illustrated book features Winnie the Pooh and some of his friends telling kids what to do during an active shooter situation. Things like, if danger is near, do not fear. Hide like Pooh does until the police appear. Pooh, in this scene, is seen burying his head in a pot of honey. Some parents and teachers say they find the book disturbing, especially since it was sent home the same week as the 1-year anniversary of the Uvalde school shooting, where 21 people were killed.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more detail today at that landmark decision by the European Union earlier this week to fine Meta, Mark Zuckerberg's tech conglomerate, a record €1.2 billion for privacy violations that took place in a massive data breach. At issue, data that was transmitted across the Atlantic to the United States. In addition to the fine, Meta has been ordered to stop transmitting data to America no later than this October. It all relates to new EU laws in 2018 that put checks and balances on the data that tech companies could store and transfer. Suzanne Lynch is chief Brussels correspondent for Politico.
What happened to both the regulators and the companies was that the technology was changing so much and so fast that the rules that were written down were not able to keep up. But this is on the back of a ruling a couple of years ago about the legal framework by which EU data is transferred to the US. And really the big picture here is stretches back to Edward Snowden, and people remember that controversy about snooping by US intelligence services. And privacy campaigners have now really successfully argued that people's data should be protected, and it shouldn't be open to that kind of intelligence snooping that we know did go on in the United States.
Meta is appealing the judgment, calling this week's ruling unjustified and unnecessary. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news, again. The leader of the far-right Oath Keepers militia group has been sentenced to 18 years in prison over his role in the January 6th insurrection at the US Capitol. US President Joe Biden says he believes a deal will be reached to raise the country's debt ceiling. The United Nations has announced a $2.4 billion pledge to provide life-saving and life-sustaining assistance for nearly 32 million people across the Horn of Africa. And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
Sources within the Vatican confirmed Tuesday that Pope Benedict XVI has dispatched an elite team of 6 bishops to sabotage leading contraceptive manufacturer Pfizer. Codenamed Conclave 6, the highly trained team of bishops will reportedly infiltrate the heavily guarded compound, detonate extremely powerful charges at key points within the factory, and then escape to a nearby safe house.
The Catholic Church can trust only the best with defending God's plan. Conclave 6 is the deadliest team of bishops I've ever laid eyes on.
The Pope denied rumors that a B team of needle-wielding priests had been deployed to a latex factory in New Jersey to poke tiny holes into thousands of Durex condoms. Locally, the best part of a gay 12-year-old's day is the half hour he spends eating lunch alone in a stairwell. Calling it his only respite from constant ridicule and mockery, 7th grader Ben McElroy says life doesn't get better than the moments he spends quietly laying out his lunch on a secluded staircase while the rest of his classmates are in the cafeteria.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the third hour of the show. You can join us here. You can bring up anything you want to discuss. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
And Jay.
If we get the chance, we'll get into your TikTok topic, Jay. We teased at the very beginning of the show, but the phones are lighting up here. We're going to go back to your phone calls and thoughts. People have opinions, surprise, surprise, about things like immigration. So we'll and we're also talking about drug prohibition as well. But let's go to the phones. And first up, we got Ernie calling us, listening to WGOW out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. He's in North Georgia. Go ahead, Ernie. Ernie in Georgia. Ernie going once. Stand by, Ernie. I don't know if we're having a technical problem here with our phones. Let's try Derek in Nashville. Derek, are you with us?
I am with you.
We have you,
All
sir.
right.
What's on your mind tonight?
All right. So probably got about 3 topics, but first off,
Well, we may only have time for one, so pick your most important one.
All right. Well, if you can put me in touch with Sheriff Hathaway out of Santa Cruz County, that would be the most important thing.
I think the best way to reach him would be to contact the sheriff's office down there.
Yeah, I've done that multiple times. No response.
Well, maybe you want to tell the people about this guy, why you're trying to contact him.
Well, I'd like to make his book on immigration into an audiobook.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I've done about 30 libertarian audiobooks over the last 10 years, and I think his is one that would probably, be very timely and very important.
Okay. If you want to try to send me an email, I can forward it over to him. I mean, obviously, I can't guarantee anything, but I can definitely do that. That sounds like a worthy thing.
What would be your email
It's
address?
Ian@freetalklive.com.
How does one...
Easy. All right.
Yeah,
So,
just send that over and just tell me what it's about, and I'll get it over to him, okay?
right on.
What else?
So this, my God, Stuart Rhodes being convicted and sentenced to 18 years. I can't believe it.
A death penalty for him, right? I mean, he's got to be coming up to 60 or somewhere around that range.
And Ray Epps is not even being charged.
I just, I'm, my heart, honestly, is just, broken for him and you and Arya and.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I mean, there's definitely a lot of government tyranny going on out there. Stuart Rhodes, let's see here. I was just trying to see if we can figure out how old this guy is, because he doesn't look like a young pup. I know he's not in his 70s or anything like that. I'm not really sure.
Well, I met him in person, and I brought him to speak at a seminar before the 10th Amendment Center.
Oh, okay.
Quite a while ago, Nullify Now. He is definitely not violent. Mm-hmm. He's never advocated violence. And I just feel like he's being, just railroaded.
Yeah, the amount of people that are going to jail that, in this country that have, for these victimless crimes, where, there's no injury, there's no one's legal rights have been, violated. There's no damage to property, is absolutely absurd. And here in New Hampshire, in a couple of weeks, my wife's being charged with some nonsense. But when we're done with this, we're going to do a major push to bring awareness to this, to how corrupt things are, and try to get something done about these prosecutors who are maliciously prosecuting people constantly. It's just business as usual. I mean, in every little town in America, it is happening everywhere. It is a major epidemic, and there needs to be an awareness program of how evil and how rotten government is, and the kind of stuff they're getting away with, and because it's really getting bad, and just literally all the stuff that is mentioned, in the Declaration of Independence is like happening times like 100 or 1,000, in this country.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Insane.
I mean, they declared independence over what was a fraction of what was going on today, and they were willing to put their lives on the line over it. Anyway, Derek, thanks for the call here tonight. I definitely appreciate hearing from you. The number, if you want to join the show, is 603-283-6160. It looks like Stuart Rhodes was born in 1966.
Are you familiar with the caller, Derek, that just came in? He said he did libertarian audio books. I wanted to ask him about how to get a hold of his books, but
if he emails me, I can forward it to you too, if you're interested in that. Looks like he is 56 or 57 years old right now, so add another 15 years to that, and you're looking at he might be getting out of jail when he's about 70 years old.
Yeah.
So not quite a death sentence, but near to it. The number here is 603-283-6160. Let's go to this caller. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
You can call me in the butt, Ian, and just answering the legal questions that were brought up by Sarah and yourself in your conversation last night that did not get answered.
Oh, did you want to talk to Sarah?
Sure.
All right, here she is. Sarah, you're on with now calling himself in the butt there from New Mexico. Go ahead.
Dude in the butt. Hey, Sarah, how's it going?
Hey, did you know that we're gonna double the number of speeding cameras here.
Sarah,
in
hold on. Before
Albuquerque.
you get to the reason you're calling, I think our other caller wanted to talk to you about some sort of legal question you had. What was that?
Well, it was actually, Ian, the questions were more coming from you based on what information Sarah had given you. One that you probably remember is you had a discussion about the left turn arrows and people running them. And that actually started, I noticed it like, I don't know, I'm just going to say 10 years ago, that it was happening more and more. And the way I assessed it is, it's pretty cool actually. If you're sitting at an intersection and the turn arrow is going and people are going through it, there might be, let's say, 8, 10, 12 cars wanting to turn, and only about maybe the first 4 got to make their turn before the arrow turned yellow and then red. And people got frustrated with that because it's not really, the traffic engineers, unless they had a different idea in mind, don't seem to be paying attention to parity, because you get all kinds of cars that get to go forward through a green light, and then only 4 cars get to make a left turn. Doesn't seem fair. And so the citizens appear to have taken it upon themselves where the 5th and 6th and 7th cars say, the hell with it, I'm making my turn even if the arrow's red.
Wow.
And then the other citizens that have to wait for them, whereas before 10 years ago they might honk at them or give them the finger or whatever, they started understanding that, hey, these things don't work, and we're going to design our own citizen design system where everybody in the left turn lane gets to make their turn after the arrow turns red, and nobody's going to complain about it.
That's amazing.
Well, I'm complaining about it because I have to watch. Yeah, you're here for me. I'm complaining about it.
You don't drive, right, Sarah?
No.
I walk.
She's upset because she just can't be bothered to actually look before she steps out in front of a car.
No, I lost 4 seconds waiting for 4 cars to turn.
4 seconds.
And then I run out of time, and they get angry with me because the car wants to turn right behind me. But you know what? I'm going to get even with you. We're going to have 34 speeding cameras now. We're going to double the number of, we had 17 speeding cameras. We're going to double it, so it comes up to 34. So
Aren't you excited?
Tickets.
Doesn't that excite you, David?
That's going to increase the cost of your Uber Eats. I guarantee it. All these.
Does she order Uber Eats?
I don't know, but so many people do that don't drive because they order
That's
food
a good
to
point,
go.
yeah.
Whatever
No,
you're.
I don't know.
It doesn't matter what the cost is. She'll have the taxpayers pay for it for her.
Well, I take I walk. I ride the bus. The bus is also free, and it's working out really well.
Did you have anything else for Sarah, David? I think we're running out of steam here.
Well, yeah, it can be for both of you. Another thing that came to mind during that discussion was that another aspect of the traffic enforcement in New Mexico is that it happened to start when APD was short-staffed by a couple hundred officers, 10%, 20% down, and they had to stop enforcing traffic law, or at least the ones that have the least consequences. They had to stop enforcing those to go fight real crime. And so the positive is you don't get hassled much by cops for traffic law in Albuquerque. The downside is that the crazy people did actually get a bit crazier as far as driving their cars in an unsafe manner. But that's another phenomenon that has affected traffic and traffic law and traffic accidents in Albuquerque.
Good to know. Good call tonight, David. Thank you for making that here. And thank you, Sarah, as well. The number is 603-283-6160. You can bring up absolutely anything that you want to discuss here on Free Talk Live. The number again, 603-283-6160. So apparently, Jay, there was a study that was done recently about TikTok, which, of course, last I heard is the #1 so-called social media app out there. It is very, very popular, especially amongst younger people. And you have expressed in recent weeks on the show some, I think, legitimate concerns over the addictive capacity of these, various different programs to get people hooked on dopamine hits when it comes to getting on these platforms. What did you learn recently?
So this YouTube video was on freedomsphoenix.com, which is one of my favorite news aggregates. There's just a lot of really good articles that are posted up there. There's not really any nonsense. There's no pop-up ads. It's not an annoying website to deal with. I really like it. And it was basically a YouTube video, and it's by a guy named the YouTube video is called Ban It, Neuroscience of TikTok. And the YouTuber is Zachary Cortex. And I'm just going to kind of rattle from memory what he was talking about. But basically the thing he was talking about is the part of the brain, I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, that gets excited by TikTok and internet devices and social media and those kind of interactions, is the same part of the brain that's excited by sex, drugs, violence, and also the same part of the brain that lights up in fits of rage that becomes stimulated during rage. And what he's talking about is he starts talking about the frequency of use of TikTok, because basically that there is like metadata where you can see how often people are, using this. And I might have misquoted this, but I believe he said it was like 7 to 9 hours a day that American kids are on TikTok.
Whoa.
Which is insane. But in my own research, as part of my lecture series on, investing in our posterity, I got a whole slideshow I'm putting together. I'm hoping to premiere it at PorkFest. We'll see this court case thing we're doing, put all that stuff on hold. But I have a whole slideshow presentation that's called "Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Device Junkies," and I talk about internet addiction and the developing brains and what happens to them and the science when you let under 6-year-olds, and as far as I'm concerned, under prepubescent boys, even, this stuff's wrecking them too. But anyways, and in my studies, I found studies in 2016 that said the average basically teenager in the United States is on an internet device 7 to 9 hours a day.
That's crazy. How do you even have time for that?
Well, if you're like if you're a teenage, if you're a 13-year-old, it's illegal for you to go get a job.
Right.
A lot of these kids, and the thing is moms and dads have been using these internet devices right along as pacifiers and babysitters. So a lot of these kids that are teenagers, now, or this was, 7 years ago, this one particular study said 7 to 9 hours a day. Now, I don't know if that's like your average kid or if that's your average internet using kid.
Well, I mean, what kids aren't on the internet these days besides your kids? I mean, there's a lot of
there's a lot of kids I'm meeting that are not on the internet. Yes,
I'm surprised.
There's a movement happening. Like like for example, there's a 22-year-old kid that I did some equipment repair work with the other day. Good-looking kid, fit guy, smart, and I'm like, dude, you got a girlfriend? He's like, nah. He goes, all the girls my age are all on TikTok and Snapchat and all this, and he goes, I'm not. He goes, they're all mentally damaged. Because they're on these. He just started telling me this stuff. Like we hadn't had a conversation about any of this stuff I've been, researching. Right. He just came out with this on his own. I was like, whoa, and I was so relieved that this guy was like on top of it.
Right.
But he's also a fitness guy, and he understands and he studied some psychology, in college. But anyways, so this. 7 to 9 hours, and I'm pretty sure that's what he said in here, but that certainly lined up with some studies that I have studied. There was also a study from like 2018.
I mean, if you think about it for a moment, presuming most of these kids are at government school, because most kids go to government school, they're in there for 8 hours a day.
Yep.
And typically, if you're sleeping 8 hours at night, maybe they're not, but if you're sleeping 6 or 8 hours, that leaves you with 8 more hours. I guess that literally is every moment that they're not at school or changing classes at school or on the bus basically every waking moment they have besides sitting in a class. If they're not allowed on their phones in class, they're on the phone, is what they're saying.
So there is a way to just harvest this data. Pretty easy, because all these platforms have this metadata, so they know how much hours individual users are on them, and allegedly that's where this came from. So anyways, in this YouTube video, it's a YouTube video. It's a 10-minute YouTube video, so it's not horrible. It's
unless you have attention deficit disorder, and then 10 minutes is
and most people
8 minutes too long.
I call it the TikTok generation. Like a lot of these young kids have very little attention span, and me, I'm like kind of a long-winded discussion when you talk to me, and I notice a lot of young kids can't follow me. They can't hang with
they're
my
checking out, getting on the phone.
Yes. Well, I just in general, they're just like they just can't absorb it. So. The frequency of use of TikTok, for example, you just swipe up for the thing you don't like. Now, when you and I were little kids and we were flipping through the channels on the TV, we couldn't just pick the thing that, stimulated our brain, that, essentially, got our whatever, excited. Today, the kids can pick it. especially if they have an internet
trains,
device.
It trains the algorithm, and then it gives you more of that.
So it's constant stimulation of this part of the brain that is, the drug addict part, the addiction part of the brain. It is like a major case for addiction. If you are listening to me and you are a grandparent, if you are a mother or a father, or you plan to be someday, you should really pay attention to some of this stuff. You should check out this, I forget the YouTuber's name again, but Ban It. Neuroscience of TikTok is the YouTube video.
Ban It?
Ban It, ? Neuroscience of TikTok is the YouTube video.
Now, you don't want to ban it, do you, Jay?
No, I don't. Okay. I don't want government having that ability. I'm not about banning it. But one of my good friends says to me all the time, if you don't govern yourself, someone else will govern you. So the thing is we have to teach our posterity how to govern themselves. This is so important. The YouTuber is Zachary Cortex, like frontal cortex.
All right, hold the thought here. I want to go to the phones here. Let's talk to this caller. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead. Hello? Caller, going once, going twice. We may be having some technical difficulties. That's 2 calls tonight. I'm going to put this caller back on hold. We'll check in with you here in the bottom of the hour and see if we can get you back on. All right, so what else do we need to know about this?
So in this video, this guy explains all of the parts of the brain that get stimulated. He gets, with the internet devices, he explains how these dopamine loops get made. And he references 3 or 4 different studies at least.
There's been a lot of them on this.
And this is getting like no corporate, mainstream coverage at all because, TikTok wants your attention.
Sure.
Probably the most valuable thing that a lot of people have in the world is their attention. You start thinking about that. So when your children are young and they're developing an attention span and you're letting them use TikTok for these 15 to 20 second, dopamine hit videos, and then something shows up that they're not interested in and they can just wave it by.
Yep.
I mean, so like children of today basically don't know what it's like to agonize over the stupid song that you can't stand on the radio while you get right. You remember that? Oh, this song's horrible. Why are they playing?
You can always punch out to a different station.
Well, maybe, but like if you're like parents are listening to the radio in a car, for example, like, I had to listen to, talk radio when I was a kid, and I sort of resented it a little bit. I kind of wanted to listen to some kind of music.
Little did you know you would end up being a talk show host.
Yeah, that's true. And but anyways, but today, like, for example, the kids all have their own device in the car half the time driving around. When you're in traffic, see them going down the road. They got the TV and the headset up, up in the front seat. So anyways, the thing is we are creating a society of drug addicts, and the addict is the dopamine, is the internet device. And I believe that people are literally becoming slaves to the algorithm. I am convinced that whoever the algorithm picks for president is who the algorithmic slaves are going to vote for. And so it's going to be real funny when we're sitting here in a couple of years. I'm like, I told you Joe Biden was going to win because the algorithm said. And that would be hopefully wake up a whole bunch of people, and it'd be like, what is wrong when you have,
But they won't connect Joe Biden winning to TikTok. They're not going to say,
it's not just TikTok. It's all of it. It's Google, it's Facebook, it's Meta, it's YouTube, it's the algorithm in general. And these people who control these algorithms, that control TikTok, like TikTok could quite literally be like, one of the most efficient weapons of war that China is using on the American people. And I don't believe it's actually China. I believe it's the World Economic Forum, the Gates Foundation, the Clintons, just all of Jeffrey Epstein's buddies, all these guys that are just been these career politicians, and they've amassed all the powers, the international banking cartels, whoever it is. And but the thing is TikTok is destroying our children. Social media is destroying our children. And when kids grow up and this is how they're introduced to life, that this is all they see is through the lens of an internet device. I don't care what it is, what social media thing it is. These young brains are being morphed to basically be controlled by these devices. And there's so many young people, they don't want to talk to anybody, especially in the cities. And now the problem is we have high-speed internet everywhere.
Well, plus we were talking about the free-range kids on this show. They've been taught by their parents that it's bad to talk to people, right? You go, oh, stranger danger. They were even talking about that back in the 80s and the 90s.
That was definitely a propaganda, campaign back in the day. You know, and I don't know, when you say free range, I think of like Dana Martin. I don't know if you remember who Dana Martin is.
Yeah, I remember Dana Martin.
So that kind of like free range parents, not like telling people that strangers are bad. But yeah, there definitely is a lot of that element. But and what's far worse than any stranger is TikTok, is these internet devices, is the algorithm reprogramming, our young kids, rewiring the brains. Like it's like a computer program that's blank and it's learning, and it's being programmed now by the algorithm instead of living, breathing grandmas and grandpas and uncles and whoever.
We're going to continue here. If you want to weigh in, the number is 603-283-6160. And your point here is it's not just about TikTok. That just happens to be the number one
it's all of them.
Culprit. Yeah, it's the whole social media apparatus. The number is 603-283-6160. You can join the show, share your thoughts here on Free Talk Live. We got more coming up.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order and you're going to obey it.
George, you can go this way. You can do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring Simon to the rally.
Walk with me. Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa. Hey. Who do you think you are? Excuse me.
There is no video or audio allowed in this office.
No, I have work today.
You ain't going to make it.
Wait on account. Now. Wait a minute.
Forget it. Whoa.
Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable! Why are you running from me? Because you're scared me. What am I being detained for?
You're being served.
What is this?
You're being served.
What is this? Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. U.S. President Joe Biden says he believes a deal will be reached to raise the country's debt ceiling, saying the two sides have made progress, but negotiations continue. Republicans want to roll back government spending, but President Biden and his Democrats do not. President Biden reiterated that the only way to move forward is to find a bipartisan agreement.
I've made it clear time and again defaulting on our national debt is not an option. The American people deserve to know that the Social Security payments will be there. The Veterans Hospital will remain open. Speaker McCarthy and I have had several productive conversations, and our staffs continue to meet as we speak, as a matter of fact, and they're making progress. Speaker McCarthy and I have had several productive conversations, and our staffs continue to meet as we speak, as a matter of fact, and they're making progress.
The credit rating agency Fitch has put the U.S. on Rating Watch Negative, reflecting the uncertainty around the possibility of a first-ever default. The leader of the far-right Oath Keepers militia group has been sentenced to 18 years in prison over his role in the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. It's the most severe punishment so far of over 1,000 cases stemming from the 2021 attack. A federal judge sentenced Stuart Rhodes over his conviction on seditious conspiracy and other charges. In handing down the sentence, the judge called Rhodes an ongoing threat to what he called the very fabric of our democracy. During the trial last year, prosecutors described how the 58-year-old had mobilized his followers to storm the Capitol in a violent effort to overturn the results of the 2020 election and keep Donald Trump in power. Speaking in court before the sentencing, Rhodes called himself a political prisoner and reiterated his support for Trump. U.S. stocks were given a boost Thursday thanks to a strong earnings report from chipmaker NVIDIA. But the fast-approaching debt ceiling deadline continues to unsettle investors. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
NVIDIA released earnings late on Wednesday that surpassed Wall Street expectations. Its shares soared nearly 25% Thursday, with traders upbeat on demand for its chips that help power artificial intelligence. That helped drive the markets, with the S&P closing up 0.9% and the Nasdaq 1.7%. But the Dow closed down 0.1% as debt ceiling talks continue to dampen sentiment. President Biden says progress is being made on talks to avoid the US defaulting on its debt. But ratings agency Fitch has put the country's credit on notice for a potential downgrade if no deal is reached. And Boston's Federal Reserve President Susan Collins says slowing inflation could be cause for the central bank to pump the brakes on its interest rate hikes. William Denslow, New York.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Yes, it is Free Talk Live. We got time for you. If you want to join the show, just dial us up here at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian
and Jay
talking about addiction to social media. Of course, TikTok is the #1 social media platform at the moment. You know, there's a lot of talk at the federal and some state government levels about potentially banning TikTok, as though that's going to solve the problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a VPN away from accessing TikTok. That's not going to do anything. And
well,
here's
plus
the thing.
It's the other ones too, is what you were pointing out.
And
right?
Yeah, it is the other ones. And here's the thing: parents need to start taking responsibility for their kids.
Yeah, the government isn't going to be able to solve this.
You know, this is the bottom line. But the problem is like half the parents, guys my age, 43 years old, they can't stop looking at their phones either.
Mm-hmm.
And even like when I was in Colorado years ago, I worked with a whole bunch of guys that were, from 60 to 20, and pretty much everyone that had a smartphone was like, just so happy to share a video with everyone else and looking at all this. They're just looking at them a lot, but especially the younger kids are having a tough time getting away from it. And it's
addictive.
And also, another thing that this got into, I forgot to bring up, was the amount of anxiety, levels of depression, by just eliminating the TikTok or the internet devices.
Mm-hmm.
Like this stuff just goes
it helps
away.
People.
It goes away. But it's like the kids are very resistant. And another thing I'm noticing too is that I've observed myself is these kids that I know that use internet devices that are young teenagers. So they're going to bed with their internet devices. Their internet devices, they're on them all night long.
Yep.
And literally these kids look like, my high school girlfriend after she went to a rave the next morning is what they look like to me. You know how like people got the bags
depleted.
under their, they just look depleted. They look pale. And, there's a lot of science behind this too.
I want to continue with the discussion here, but also let you know about Mark Warden, who is with Porcupine Real Estate. They do amazing work up here in New Hampshire. If you've heard about the migration of freedom-loving people coming here to New Hampshire and you're thinking about learning more, well, you can sign up for their seminars, their webinars, I guess, over at move.freetalklive.com. They're going to cover different topics: gun freedom, medical freedom, political freedom victories, best practices for moving to the Free State, and, of course, finding housing, and probably some more stuff that I don't even know about. Go to move.freetalklive.com. That takes you over to the Porcupine Real Estate sign-up site. It's completely free to get registered and attend these webinars. If you want to see what they've already done, you can visit their YouTube channel, Porcupine Real Estate, and you can watch their past presentations there. They're people who have Porcupine Real Estate is staffed by people who've moved here. Mostly, I think almost all of their people are Free Staters.
I'm pretty sure they all are.
They're people who they know the community here. They know the ground as far as real estate opportunities. These are great people to talk to about what it's like to live here. So go to move.freetalklive.com, get signed up for the upcoming webinars there. As we go to the phones to your calls and thoughts, Conejo is on the line in FEMA Region 13. Conejo, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
I just wanted to say that I think you're on fire tonight. It's been a great show. I don't want to break the flow, but Jay, I have a suggestion for you. But first, I want to say that we've met a few times, once in person, other platforms, different aliases.
Okay.
And I'm a big fan of yours, and Ian, same. And I echo the sentiments of the earlier caller.
Well, thank you.
When,
And for anyone
you got
who would like, there are still possibility to write letters to the judge in the Crypto 6 case. You can go to letters.freetalklive.com. My sentencing has been delayed until July 17th, and so we got more time. So if you've been putting it off, if you've been thinking about doing it, if I've had any kind of a positive effect on your life, and you want to express that to the judge, you can do that. And there's some instructions and a mailing address and some ideas there for you at letters.freetalklive.com. So what else were you calling about tonight, Conejo?
Letters.freetalk.com.
Freetalklive.com. Letters.freetalklive.com.
Letters.freetalk.com.
Freetalklive.com. Yep.
Actually, when you got rated, I donated $1,000 in Monero to rebuild the studio.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Yeah. Huge fan.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I was just calling. I remember you back from the Bitcoin, I think Pizza Days, maybe even that far back on the Free Talk Live show or network.
Well, Bitcoin Pizza Day happens every year. I mean, that was 3 days ago.
Oh, I'm talking about when you very first started talking about it as a news segment.
Oh, okay. So that's a long time ago.
I think my first time on Free Talk Live was actually at a Pork Fest, and we had talked about it was we were up at Pork Fest, and we got the notice the Friday of Pork Fest. Somebody calls me, hey, they're going to come kick you out of your house on Monday. They're removing you, right? I believe that's what it was. And then we did. So I got on. I sat there at the picnic table with you and Mark, and we talked about it. You're doing. Oh no, you're up in the media room. We did the show. I did the show in the media room with you. I don't. What was that? 2011, 2012, maybe
something like that.
But so that was my first time on Free Talk Live.
Wow.
I believe.
Long time ago. All right, Conejo, what else?
Well, however long it was, I did notice your absence. It's good to hear you're back. You drop in occasionally. What I was calling about was you've got you're doing some sort of club for young boys and men.
Well,
or no?
What I'm doing, I call my homeschool program curriculum Man Camp. And
but it's open to anybody.
Okay.
But it's open to anybody because a man is a man and a woman is just a man with a womb. And womb man is where the etymology of the word woman comes from. It's just pretty simple. But the idea with Man Camp is to build confidence in mankind. You just have no idea until you witness this yourself or you do it yourself. And also, I want to encourage anyone to host their own kind of Man Camp with whatever skill they are. Carpenter, auto repair, blacksmith, mason, whatever. Find some kids in the neighborhood that want something to do and give them something to do. The younger, the better. And but when you take a 6-year-old and you give him a piece of 2 foot long by 1/4 inch steel rod, and you show him how to heat it up in that forge and make it into a coat hook on that anvil with a hammer, and how to cut it and how to flatten the end and punch a hole through it so you can bring it home and stick it on a wall. And a 6-year-old can make this thing because it's easy to do. I got some light hammers for the little kids, and it's really good to have their parent right there with them. And all the reports I've gotten from the parents and the kids who have done Man Camp is that their confidence soars, and they are so proud of this thing they made. And my purpose for this is people who have confidence will develop competence. And it is competent people that make the world go round. It is competent people that get things done. And guess what else competent people don't need? They don't need government. It is the people who lack competence and lack competence that beg for government. And It is the sociopaths of the world who want government as a platform to, be sociopaths from and psychopaths.
So people can help you do Man Camp at the upcoming Porcupine Freedom Festival by going to your website, Jaynoon, that's JAYNOONE.com, and you've got some crypto links there that people can contribute towards getting the parts and hiring professionals to help out with Man Camp.
Yeah, our goal is $5,000. We are actually a couple weeks when I first got the $2,500 donation, we were over halfway, but now the crypto prices have fallen a little bit. We're just a little under halfway to our goal, and I'm only able to really accept crypto because I don't have a bank account. I don't do any of this other stuff. Right. So this is just a real good, experiment to see what happens. Even if I don't get any more donations, like I said, we basically got to halfway there so far. My goal was June 1st because I need a couple weeks to order some equipment and stuff, and I've already bought some equipment. But we'll have a small setup if we only got this far. It's just it's important to start teaching work to kids as young as possible. It really is.
Yeah.
So there you go, Conejo. Anything else you want?
Trades. Yeah, well, the idea I was calling about is at least as of a year and a half ago, and I actually we talked over sausage burgers. I think you might have a significant other. If you do, I'm drunk, so sorry.
Sorry.
If you do, I think it'd be a great thing to have like an analog organization spun off by your spouse, your significant other.
We do. We actually do. So here's what. So here's what my wife does. So we have a toddler, essentially like homeschool co-op. So because my kids are a little over 3 and a little under 2, basically all of my activities, all of my recreation, everything that I essentially do in time that I'm either not working, sleeping, or fighting a court case is with my kids. All my farming is at a level to where I can do it all with my kids. All of our gardening is at a level we can do pretty much all of it with the kids, raising the pigs, the chickens, the cows. There's certain things the kids can't help me handle the cows really, but they feed them every day. They go, my kids pick grass every day. They rip up grass, they put it in wagons, and then they walk it over to the cows and they feed it to the cows through the fence. So we have a 1 day a week homeschool co-op where we have, it's like 6 or 7 moms are coming. With some of them got 1 kid, a couple of them have 4 kids. We had like 24 kids at the house the other day that were helping out with the garden. We've been planting plants. We've been putting gathering rocks up to put on top of the garden felt paper to keep our anti-weed paper. They all did that the other day. I get them and actually a bunch of the kids been when they come I go do some chores with the backhoe. And the kids love riding on the backhoe with me. And, I got them, steering it and using the hydraulics, and operating stuff. And they think it's a blast. And so, yes, my wife is, she's doing this. And she's doing a great job. And it's a lot of fun. And the thing is these most of the families that are coming to our place, they live in apartments or houses in the city. They don't really have gardens or rooms or chickens, but so they're all getting to collect eggs, feed the chickens, clean out the stock trailer. We don't have any pigs right at the moment, but there's just so much.
Some good experience.
Yeah, and just doing all kinds of stuff. I went out actually to a local mom and pop hardware store. They're going out of business, and I bought all of the small little kid shovels and tools. The guy I told him what I was doing. He's like, I'm going to give them to you for 50% off if my boss lets me, So he comes back. You could have them for 50% off.
That's sweet.
Yeah, it was really awesome because little kid tools, they're like $11, $12 a tool.
Yeah. Right.
And so I want to have enough of these for all the kids to use. So they're using little rakes and shovels.
To be left out.
And yeah, so my wife's been right on top of this. I mean, my 3-year-old is counting in Spanish. Because they went to a Spanish class for 6 weeks.
Conejo, you get to meet these guys. Are you coming up to the Porcupine Freedom Festival this year?
I'm trying. I could give you a whole segment on how I'm getting screwed over right now by the state I live in. I tried to start a business, and they're claiming I owe a bunch of income that I didn't even make a dime on.
Man.
They just guesstimated. Yeah. So I'm hoping.
Get to New Hampshire and start a business. Don't ask the government for permission because I don't know what your business is or your skill. But if there's a marketplace for it, let's exercise this alternative parallel economy. That's what we really need to start to build.
Yeah, we need to build that
and
for sure.
If you're into that kind of stuff, New Hampshire is really a place to do that. We can, exchange in crypto, gold backs, meat. Whatever. It's so much fun doing business with those kind of people too.
No doubt. Thank you, Conejo, for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. Let's go to Kadu on the line in Connecticut. Kadu, you're on Free Talk Live with Ian and Jay.
Hey, I wanted to talk about David in New Mexico.
Okay.
And the reason I don't want to pigeonhole David in New Mexico as a grouch is because when he calls and he's in a decent mood, I think he's one of the best and most likable callers. So I think before he calls in, he should just meditate on the fact that he's talking to friends, because you all have been, everybody on the panel, there have been spats, but everybody on the panel, I think, has his best interests at heart. And if he could just meditate on that, he's talking to friends. His calls are great when he's in an okay mood.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. He tends to range from being really informative and interesting to hostile and rude. So it just depends. I suspect there's things going on in his life, and that could be translating. But I think your advice is good advice could do, and that's not just advice for David in New Mexico, but it's good advice for anybody to just take some time to meditate, to be with the universe or whatever, however you want to call it. There's actually apps for this now. Considering people have a tough time getting off their phone, you can actually use your phone in the process of meditation, which might be a good way to get away from the phone. Ironically enough, you can have these guided meditations.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, right. The meditation apps. And because I think that you guys have been good to him, and I think you have benefited him, so he should look at that angle.
Well, that's a nice way to look at things, could do. It's certainly always good to look on the bright side and stay positive. And anything else you want to share here tonight?
No, that's it.
I appreciate the call. The number here, if you want to join us, 603-283-6160. Meditation is something that anybody can benefit from. You can do it in as little as 10 minutes a day. It's not something that has to take a huge amount of time out of your schedule. Obviously, you can go for 20, 30, an hour or whatever, depending on what you want to put into it. But getting some time alone, getting some time to yourself, where you're not having a device in front of you or having to be distracted by other things is an interesting way to possibly get some new ideas and to calm whatever it is you need to calm. There's all kinds of different benefits from meditation. And I say that as a novice. I mean, I'm somebody who's been on and off practicer of meditation over the last roughly 10, 15 years of my life. I wouldn't call myself, advanced or anything like that, but I think it's benefited me. So, no comments on that one. Are you meditating right now, Jay?
No. I was waiting for the caller to comment.
No, he's gone.
No. I was just thinking, like, I kind of don't really do meditation, but
you don't have a lot of time.
Well, almost like but meditation for me was I got up like real early this morning, and I just needed to do a bunch of backhoe.
You could do working meditation.
Yeah, so I was just in I left the phone in the house, and
you get in the zone.
I didn't even turn the radio on, and I just was. I was cleaning out a cow pen because I moved some cows around. I'm making compost, I stacked a compost pile, and just I spent a couple hours in the backhoe. No kids, no phone, nothing,
no distractions, and just you and your
Yeah, and another thing that's been some good meditation is when I'm out putting up the electric fence for the pigs, or that was one thing when I had the pigs on like a 2-acre forest spot. I would just take and just walk it every single day because you got to go look at the fence, make sure it's not down, and your pigs are going to be in your neighbor's garden or something.
Yeah, that's a problem.
And so I would take the fence and walk it, like almost every day, especially the first couple of first week that they're out there, but at minimum every 2 days, and fix it a little bit or whatever, and. I definitely do some meditation. But
yeah, for sure. It's important. Let's continue here. We got Rob on the line, and there are walking meditations as well. Rob, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Yes.
I just wanted to say to Jay that I'm going to do everything I can to be at that hearing, because
June 1st. You're talking about his trial?
I don't know.
You're talking about Jay's wife's trial, which is coming up June 1st?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Because the people that are doing this, are sick and disgusting.
Yeah,
the prosecutors, you mean?
Well,
the police.
Yes, yep.
DCYF.
There's very
gang.
much discontent for these people.
Yeah, I hope there's a large turnout. It's going to be bright and early, 8:15 if I recall correctly.
Yep, that's what
it's
they said.
Concord District Court. So if you're in New England and you want to see an interesting, I would call it an interesting show, because anytime Jay's in front of a judge, it can be interesting. In this case, you're not the person on trial though, Jay. You're going to be up there, accompanying your wife, who's the one that's facing the charge of quote unquote child endangerment for leaving her 2-year-old, I think, in a car with climate control on, strapped into a car seat, for no more than 15 minutes a couple of years ago or a year ago or whatever.
It was March of last year, March 18th, I think was the day. And it's an interesting thing is even in the police narratives, the police officer is like, officer partner of mine and I looked at the kids and they appeared to be well taken care of and clean or something. I can't remember it all, but and
so you'll get to ask them about that.
They were comfortable. I could see the car was running. I could see a little plastic bag that was on the seat blowing. So I knew the air conditioning was on, and I knocked on the window, and it woke the juvenile up. But the juvenile appeared to be happy, and the mother looks like she can take care of her children. Is basically what the cop had to say, and is like. And it's just like
case closed,
essentially. And it's like, did the prosecutor actually read?
I don't know.
And this narrative statement, it's like an application for warrant, is basically what it. I meant to actually bring it with me tonight, but I was just my brain was mush by the time I got to heading down.
How is that an application for a warrant?
I could bring up the PDF but it's basically that's what it is. Is this thing is an application. Essentially for a warrant. It basically
to what? Break into the car and take the kid?
A warrant to arrest my wife. It was when they put an arrest warrant out for her.
I don't understand how someone who wrote that document could then go on to apply for a warrant.
Well, that's what he says in the document asking for the warrant. Because these guys are political pawns, because the police are being used by the people above them, their superiors, to literally commit crimes against malicious prosecution against people whoever they want. And what's really interesting about this particular case, it is so inconsistently applied because there are a lot of people who have, their kid was in the car while they went and did something for, a short time or whatever. And, how much time is too long? I mean, I don't know how you figure that out. But anyways, there's so many people that, the cops get called on them and the cops come there and they're like, what's going on? Oh, yeah, okay. Somebody called. We had to respond. And then they just leave.
Sure.
Yeah, and it was the same thing. People right from Concord, the same police, Concord, New Hampshire police department. We talked to people that literally were like, oh, yeah, my kids were in the car while I was in the store. And the cop was basically like, oh, we got to report. It's not against the law. And it's not against the law. There is no law, against leaving your kids in the car. And the thing is, too, is like, anybody who, is everybody remembers being in the car while their mom runs in the store or whatever. Like everybody's done it. This is like,
sure.
Something that's happened. But just the blatant, malicious prosecution that's happening here. Just
what do they have to prove for child endangerment? What is the actual
it's very
elements
vague.
of that?
The law is very vague. So I did a motion to dismiss with the court that was sort of a weak motion to dismiss. I didn't really have it quite put together enough.
They never work anyway, but doesn't hurt to try.
Well, I've had them work before, and the real reason you want to do these motions to dismiss is to prepare everything for appeal because you want to just stack everything in this appeals thing, object to all the stuff they deny. Really get it out there. So I did a motion to dismiss to the court, and then the judge denies the motion to dismiss. Well, in this motion to dismiss that the judge did as an order, which you read one night, Ian, you didn't read it on the air, you just read it to yourself. The judge cites 4 court cases on how the court has jurisdiction in this matter. 3 of the court cases he cites are about children that were injured, where 2 children died, and 1 children had, broken bones or something had happened where the kid gotten busted up by
didn't happen in this case.
A guy. And then the 4th one they cited was U.S. versus Kritzner, which was a bank robbery. So it's like they're like, okay. And my whole premise of jurisdiction is there's no injured party, there's no victim,
right?
There's no damage, there's no contract violation. It's all these things I get into,
right?
And so anyways, and it's pretty funny, the judge cites a bunch of cases that actually have a corpus delicti.
A body of evidence.
A body of evidence. Well, an injured party. Body of the crime is what corpus delicti stands for. But yeah, Rob, I appreciate your support. That'd be great. It'd be nice to stuff that courthouse. Yeah, people have been writing letters. There's been some really good letters written. I don't know how many letters have been written. Are
they going to you and then you're going to turn them in?
No, these people are just mailing the letters. But the letter I had shared with you a little earlier, Ian, was one that a friend had sent me, and
it was really good.
Yeah, it was a good letter.
Do courts actually let those in through the mail? I mean, is that a thing that you can do?
So technically, from what I understand, you can literally send a letter to the judge referencing the court case and what's going on, and what'll happen is that the letters to the judge, they get given to the judge.
Okay. Interesting. I did not know that was a thing.
That's what I'm told. That's what I understand.
Yeah.
I mean, Well, it'd be a violation of some kind of mail law or, postal service thing if you interrupted, the delivery of the mail to somebody.
I just mean like when it gets to the court, if that actually makes it to the judge's desk. I hope it does. Rob, hopefully we'll look forward to seeing you next week. I'm hoping to be there as well. I got to put in my schedule with probation, and they've been letting me go to trials for recording things, so hopefully I'll be there with a camera.
And thank you. Remember that, people, you're listening to Free Talk Live.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it, man. Out of time tonight. Back tomorrow. Online in the meantime, freetalklive.com, and check him out at jnoon.com. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes to vote on. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by the Treasury. In fact, that's exactly how we got this sponsorship. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first, nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get